Hello, everyone, and welcome to a sad edition of Turn Out a Punk. My name is Damien, and today, of course, I'm going to be talking about the passing of Alan Scott Barile, aka Lethal, from the legendary, all hugely seminally important hardcore band SSD, Society System Decontrol, and later Engage, someone who I got to know. I'm not going to pretend like I knew extremely well, but I got to know a little bit from being on the show. And unlike a lot of people that were on the show, he's someone that I actually stayed in contact with afterwards. And we talked a little bit here and there about wrestling and music. And someone I really had a lot of respect for. If you followed Al on social media, you know that over the last few years, he has really when he came on social media, he talks about it on this episode that you're about to hear, because he wanted to kind of confront what was happening in this world around us. He was someone who, in addition to being hugely important for music, I feel like was a very important voice at a time when sadly, a lot of our heroes in punk and hardcore were revealing themselves to be maybe not as down with the ideas of unity and everyone being as accepted as they might have pretended to be at different times. Al's someone who really, really wanted to fight against sort of the rising tide of fascism and extreme right ideologies in America, and someone who made it very public that he was not a fan of Donald Trump. I think you'd want me to say that expressly right here, right now. I'm going to miss Al. I'm going to miss his presence in this world. I'm really going to miss knowing he's out there. This episode, I wanted to put back up there because I know maybe people are going to be wanting to hear some stuff about him. And I wanted to make sure there were no ads and there's just a little acknowledgement about how important this guy was. He's survived by his amazing wife and friend of the show, Nancy. Nancy Barile is someone who, like Al, I think Al would also be the first to say, maybe even more than him, is someone who is an incredibly cool, positive light in this world. So we're sending out all our love and all our positive thoughts to Nancy right now. And Nancy has issued kind of a public statement on Instagram saying, in lieu of flowers, because as per Al's wishes, there's not going to be a service or anything, you can make a donation if you want to Dana Farber Cancer Institute. He also told people that they should go out and get their colonoscopy done. And he also said that said that he would want you to reach out and let your congressperson know, if you're in the United States, that you want Trump to start funding cancer research again. So thoughts and love again go out to Nancy right now. And we're going to miss you, Al. Al Barile, 1961 to 2025. Rest in peace. Al, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yes, thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to it.
Well, I have been, as I was telling you off air, looking forward to this thing for almost 30 years now because, as I was saying, SSD were one of the first bands that I kind of fell in love with when I was getting into hardcore. And to be here talking to you, it's a huge thrill. So once again, we're going to hopefully nerd out. But I got to start this off the way they all start off, which is, Al, how'd you get into punk? Do you remember the first time you ever came across it?
So I got to go back a little bit into my music thing. So I started like becoming aware of music, like rock music. I'd say probably 75ish or something like that. Like eighth grade. A girl with me, Queen and stuff like that. So from Queen, I started to see the big arena rocks. I couldn't get into the clubs, and then saw the groups like Boston, all the arena touring acts. But I always felt like, geez, this is all it is. I got extremely bored watching them. I could barely get through the concert. I just was like, I found myself like looking around, walking around the arena. So it wasn't like I was like, but I definitely loved, the whole music thing. I've even dating back a little before that, liking music. So, anyways, I'd say 78 was a big year because I got my license. So now I could start driving around and getting into a lot of trouble, So that was like a big opening for me to really start exploring, start looking, looking into the phony IDs and trying to see if I can get clubs. I remember one, I know you're from Canada. I had one of my IDs said I was John Taylor from, I think, Ontario, Canada or something, I went for I had the choice to go out of the country, and I said, I'm going to get one ID that's out of the country. Then I had another one from Ohio, I had various sorts of them. And I can tell you later on how that came back to haunt me in a way. But so I had IDs. So I started going to clubs in Boston. I remember seeing like Mission of Burma, still saying, started checking out those Boston bands and being really disappointed, like really disappointed, saying, man, I'm going to turn, 21 or 20, and this is what I got. So, I said, this isn't going to work for me, So I went back to the drawing board and kind of rethought things and decided to play guitar around that period, probably 79. I think I took up guitar, and it's a big stretch for me because I don't consider myself particularly the guy that, like, if you ask people I went to high school with, they're not going to say, yeah, I knew he was going to be a rocker someday. He was going to play in a punk rock. I don't think they would have, they probably most likely, I don't even know what they would say, but it wouldn't be that. So I don't think, that was really necessarily my destiny. So I was trying to kind of buck the trend and, see what I could do with music. But I did, most important person, I guess, that might've helped me get a little quicker was, this guy, Cliff Cunningham from San Diego. And that summer of 79, probably a little bit in 78, I hung around with his brother a lot, and he turned me on to Highway to Hell, AC/DC. So I started, I think Highway, Bon Scott's like a different kind of singer. So if you listen to traditional radio music, and all of a sudden you hear Bon Scott, you're like, Jesus, this is great. I think they actually were getting some radio airplay when Highway to Hell came on, but certainly not the radio airplay they got when Back in Black came out, the push they got then. In fact, I don't think there was much of a push, but I can't remember. So anyways, he also sent his brother out, the Black Flag, that yellow, the one with the yellow one with the
Jealous Again?
guns. Yeah, Jealous Again.
Yeah.
I think he said maybe the Dead Kennedys record, he can't sort me. It was like ACT. He sent his brother some things. So Circle Jerks, I got these things sent me the Circle Jerks. So I got to listen to that. So then I was like, wow, and I was I already seen the Ramones. I think the Ramones is like a critical band in the whole evolution. So, and I think most people probably around my age went through that thing where they saw the Ramones, in the late 70s, and then we're looking for the next thing. I was big into Cheap Trick, Van Halen, 78, but always looking for Van Halen. When I saw Van Halen, they were kind of what I was looking for a little bit. They were very incredible, those first shows, jumping off the stage, and it was really quite visual. I remember I used to scalp tickets, so I bought the first I think the first 30 row, first 3 rows they played the Orpheum. It was like a 2,000 seater. First time Van Halen came through Boston. So, I was onto them right at the beginning. They played some general admission shows in the Cape. I saw them. I actually traveled down to Virginia to see them. So I was kind of into Van Halen a lot, into Cheap Trick. I kind of met Rick Nielsen a few times. So I was big into him, but the Ramones, and then all of a sudden Black Flag, Dead Kennedys, all that came into my orbit. I started driving in, seeing more clubs, sneaking in more places, and then getting more exposure to that. So that's really how I found my way to punk rock. I'd say the conduit would have been the Ramones, and then it would have been Black Flag, Dead Kennedys, that kind of stuff. At the same time, I was exploring English punk rock a little bit, so I was and I wouldn't even call it punk rock. I was into the Cure, I listened to the Cure, UK Subs, Buzzcocks, Sex Pistols, obviously, that kind of thing. Probably a lot more, but that's basically what I remember. Big UK Subs fan, actually. And then I think when I discovered the US hardcore thing, and I got more, it was more like that was more rock and more like my niche, combination of rock. And then I found the Bad Brains. Then I thought I found the pinnacle of everything. To me, the Bad Brains were AC/DC, that's who they were. I mean, some people wouldn't get that, but if you saw them in 1981, being in that room with them, unlike any experience I could have gone through. And it would be like seeing AC/DC in a small little club. There's no doubt in my mind. That's what it would have been like. And probably even, I think would have been better, or like Led Zeppelin in a small club. That's the way I consider seeing the Bad Brains. And like I saw them at this like A7 club, 171, these tiny, tiny clubs, and they had been doing it for a while. So, I mean, I was probably late to the Bad Brains game. I mean, I think they just come to New York shortly when I discovered them. So they hadn't been around New York long, but, they had already they burnt their bridges, I think, going up through DC and, probably, probably well, I'm sure that, you can find the history with them. Like, I think they're the greatest band of all time, but they have a history of, going through like guys that tried to help them along, and it's probably a page of like 12 people that tried to help them all along the way, a trail from DC to Boston to New York, whatever, and
Yeah. Well, I think before we get to all that stuff, going back to when you mentioned, Van Halen.
I went too long, by the way. Sorry.
No, good. What are you talking about? This is amazing.
I knew I had to get from point A to point B, and I was trying to figure out how quick I could do it.
No, this is the exact pace I want this thing to move. Please, like this is perfect. But like, you say AC/DC, Cheap Trick, and Van Halen, like less so with Cheap Trick, but certainly with Van Halen and AC/DC, both those bands were weirdly like kissing cousins with punk rock. There's that Van Halen flyer, that Ramones.
I was a subscriber to Circus Magazine. Okay, so like like those are you got like you got the new wave bands are in Circus Magazine. This is like people won't understand this, but back then it was really hard to get exposed. Like those bands weren't played on the radio, necessarily. Like album, we used to have a thing called like where they played like deep cuts or album cuts in Boston, but that kind of just was like fading out when I kind of started listening to the radio and stuff. It became more like like heavy rotation kind of cuts and stuff like that. So you weren't going to get. But we did have a station BCN who were like I remember seeing I think like AC/DC did a live concert on that that concert network or whatever and stuff. I think there was some good shit. There was a little bit of exposure, but ultimately back then. I remember, like for me, before I met, this Cliff Cunningham who sent me the Black Flag, all that stuff. You go to like we had this store called like a department store, Caldor or Target or whatever, the equivalent, like, and it used to just be like the records would be lined up and you'd like look at the cover, and a lot of people bought records based on the cover art, and because you didn't really radio, like if you don't have radio and you don't have a brother and sister that are necessarily cool, it's like, and if you don't hang around cool friends, you're not going to probably get exposed to a lot of music. So, Circus Magazine was one of the ones. I think Cream I bought every once in a while. But, I definitely subscribed to Circus. That's where I got the fake IDs out of the back of that, by the way, too. So Circus Magazine played a huge role in making me who I am. I remember that the ad for the phony IDs in the back.
Because you like Cheap Trick, did you ever like the Real Kids and all from Boston?
Those are the kind of bands that I really didn't like.
Really?
Yeah. Like I'm not saying I put anyone down, but I'm just saying it wasn't where I was coming from. Like that's like garage rock I would consider it. The garage rock bands. Yeah, I don't really like the Liars or another garage rock band, famous Boston band. Yeah, that was the scene that was kind of going when I came. Okay. And there was also a lot of bands that were kind of playing, strangely enough, like Mission of Burma, but to a more art degree, let's say, like more, combined Gang of Four, Mission of Burma, and Fugazi. That's what was in Boston when I was there. Okay. I mean, not heavy guitars, like I'm a heavy guitar guy. That's the best way to describe it. Like, when the bands you just mentioned, I'm not putting them down. Okay. But I don't like Telecasters. I don't like that sound. I don't like twangy, tingy. I don't like Fender amps. I just don't. But it's not like I'm not saying it's bad or anything. I just don't like it. So I like heavy guitars. That's to me forms basically everything. For me.
What about La Peste? Better Off Dead? That's got some heavy guitars.
Well, that's a big Boston. That's the big crossover band that I'm supposed to like right now. But I have such a bad taste in my mouth from all those Boston bands. I couldn't accept them because my singer, believe it or not, Springer, was heavily into those bands. He used to roadie for La Peste and Pastiche and the Real Kids. So, your interview with Springer would be a whole different thing. He embraced those bands. He loved them. He knows them all. They're his friends. I wanted nothing to do with them. My goal when I hit Boston was to blow the entire music scene up, blow it up. That's what I tried to do, because I was upset that it wasn't all ages. Okay. I couldn't, the fact that, the drinking age was 20, and I think I was 19. Then the drinking age became 21, and I was 20. So I was always like 1 year behind, right? So I think it's ridiculous that I had to wait till 21 to go see bands. It's just, in many ways, I took a stand against that. Like we didn't, we played a couple times, over 21 clubs or whatever, but for the most part, we were an all ages band. And strategically, once in a while, you might have to play something, but it wasn't often. Like I could probably count on one hand how many times we played over 21 clubs. Number one, we didn't play it a lot, but there's no way. Growing up with the bitter taste I had in my mouth, like say ACD were playing, or Cheap Trick was playing. Our big club was a Paradise at the time. Okay, they never did like all ages or 18 plus or anything. It was all whatever the drinking age was. There's this club in my hometown that all of a sudden was the first club that I knew about in the area to break that trend and do the wristband thing. Okay, it used to be called the Harbor House. Then it became the main act. And believe it or not, like I don't even know who was booking it back then, but all of a sudden they started doing some strange bookings, like the band Magazine played there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's odd. This is Lynn. We're talking a very kind of blue collar town. A band Magazine played my hometown, in 1980 or something. We're not, people didn't know who Magazine was in my hometown. I did, but no one else did. Howard Devoto and everything.
Who were they playing with? Were they playing
Huh?
with did they play with a local band? Like who were they playing with there?
Oh, I can't remember. You're right. That's a good point. Who opened up for him? I probably someone like the Nervous Eaters or something, like this band Sass or Stomp is. I don't know. Like I don't. They all were kind of headliners in themselves. Yeah, I should have been. You're right, but I wasn't paying attention to who was opening. If there was an open, I probably was out fighting in the parking lot, waiting to get in for the Ramones. But they were the first club to actually let a kid in. And it was exciting. To get in. This was exciting. So like I wasn't going to play and deny people of what that excitement I felt. So I really. We started out in our first shows were in a gallery, then we moved to like another kind of gallery space, and I think we played the Rat once, and it was an important show, actually, a pivotal show, because we got a big article in our local like weekly newspaper was called the Boston Phoenix, and this guy Doug Simmons wrote this good article, kind of controversial at the time. I remember, I don't really remember what it was. It was shocking, I think, to some people. Like what he said, like he reviewed us. We played this Rat, but there was a riot. The bouncers tried to stab someone or beat someone up. I don't know, all that kind of typical shit in a club that would happen. At that time, they weren't ready for us, and you kind of expect it. I remember thinking I had to hire police, maybe even going into the show. I was thinking I gotta find some ex-cops or something. I knew there was going to be a bad thing happening. Anyways, it was an important show just to kind of like let them know we were there. But then we kind of pulled back out and went back to the art galleries and the spaces that were kind of more common, and that's where the whole Boston hardcore started. Really kind of started out at art galleries and these like loft spaces.
It's fascinating to me because like this sort of sentiment about hating the scene that was just prior is echoed by John Brannon, when he's on the show. When I talk to Ian Mackay, he's talking about the same sort of thing. And you hear it's, taken up all the time in the West Coast, like how different that sort of second wave of hardcore was from that first wave of punk. Like it really feels like there was a break, and this thing was like a new thing in all these scenes where it kind of explodes.
Yeah, I think to me it was a big break. Like I don't know. I just felt. I mean, I don't want to. I guess I'm not afraid to put Boston down, but I just, I was disappointed. I didn't think it was geared towards kids. It was geared towards people. It just was geared towards people who want to go out on a Thursday night, a Friday night, or whatever, and get drunk. It was not a music scene. I didn't think it was. I'm sure LaPeste would argue, but I didn't go there to get drunk. I really didn't. I went there to enjoy music. That's what I wanted to do. So
What about a song like "I'm Straight" by Jonathan Richman and the Modern Lovers? Had you heard that?
I know the Jonathan. I know Jonathan Richman and the Modern Loves out, but I can't say I'm familiar with his catalog.
Oh, he's got this song called "I'm Straight." That's like the
Really?
first straight edge song,
Wow.
I think
What
ever.
year
And
did that come out?
I think it's what 75 that LP comes out,
Really?
74
Never
maybe.
heard of it. That would have been a good reference point. How'd you
It,
hear it? You're a fan of them, or
I'm just like a nerd for all this stuff, and I think it's like
oh
one of the fascinating things. Like over time, obviously the context disappears. So
yeah.
I look at Boston, I look at all these amazing bands happening, but only when you're living through it you see like how nuanced it all was and how these were like different worlds.
Yeah, it took I'm not gonna lie, and I'm not gonna say I take credit for it, but it wasn't easy to get the Boston thing kind of, because I'm sure every city might do the same thing, but there was a strong pull to go to the clubs with this thing, certainly after it got a little popular, and I know that I resisted those temptations, certainly after we did establish like all ages shows at some of the bigger venues, and stuck to that, although it was like on a Sunday afternoon, which I don't really consider what I was looking for, necessarily looking for as a prime time. To me, it should have been a Friday night or Saturday, whatever. It shouldn't be no different. You should be able to go to a club and not drink. That's the way I look at it. That's the way it should be. And fuck them if they can't. It's everything. Let's face it, they're trying to make profits on people selling drinks, so that's not in their interest at all. So if the bands don't take a stand, then no one's going to take a stand. But I understand it's business. Maybe if I was in that business, I wouldn't know. If I was in that business, I would try to make it music, but obviously people, I understand business really too, like I, I understand it.
Well, yeah,
So
and
it doesn't surprise me.
well, and like you're saying, it is a business to sell alcohol, and that's you're really seeing that now. Like there's a reason no one wants to have masks in bars and clubs because that
Right.
impedes the drinking that goes on, and that's ultimately, I guess, what the industry is kind of run on a club level at least.
Yeah. Well, I mean, also, yeah, it's interesting that whole mask thing and the music thing, like, I mean, you just like maybe go back into thinking like, I wrote this song "Fun to You," and it's funny. Also, I heard during the pandemic, everything was like, "I want to have some fun. I want to have fun. Hey, can't we go and have fun?" So you're just like, when you said that, like it hit home to me, like, like I don't have that mentality, like everything in life doesn't have to be fun to me, I really don't think that way, life isn't supposed to be all fun. Now, other people think, well, fuck it, man, if you're not having fun, life's not, why are you even living or something, I just don't share that philosophy, like I believe, I have fun getting things done, I have fun, I have fun so many other ways. I don't need to just like be constantly, has some kind of a stimulation like that, It's fun just doing nothing, I don't know. But I'm just saying, I just don't like that thing, like the stimulation fun thing, So, but the mass and everything, like, we can't make a little small sacrifice, which even getting back to the mandate thing, which I'm not going off topic, but I mean, we really can't make these small sacrifices once in a while. Is it become that, polarized that no one can make a sacrifice? No one can, I don't like to wear seatbelts and stuff like that, And if if they truly was sitting next to me in my car with me, I would wear that seatbelt.
I think another thing I find fascinating is your motivation for starting SSD because it seems like it's so different than people's normal reasons for wanting to start a band. Like you normally you start a band because there's a goal in mind, and it really seems from stuff interviews I've read with you and things that you said that like SSD was it's almost like a concept more than it's just a band, like, and even the fact that you like the way you're learning to play guitar to do this band, it seems like it feels like it's different. It's so much more different and so much more in
Yeah,
keeping
I
with
guess
what
so.
hardcore bands are now. Yeah.
I don't know, like, you're right. I mean, I did think that way. Like, I never really learned other people's songs, I just tried to concentrate on what I was doing. Only maybe, I think there's like 2 or 3 songs I might have learned. And then certainly, that's probably why my playing still sucked, is I never really found, found it enjoy, I can't say, like, I'm not one of the guys that say, I'm going to sit down and play guitar because it's purely enjoyable. I look at that guitar as work, but I mean, I look at everything as work. I really do, and work is enjoyable to me. So it's not like I look at it as a negative thing, but it's not like enjoyment would be, I can't even think of what's enjoyable right now because I'm, but, but yeah, I looked at it like I looked at it as a challenge, really. Like I mean, I challenged to blow the Boston music scene up. The challenge to, I didn't think I should be. I didn't think I was destined to be a guitar player to like fuck with the universe and say I'm going to play guitar. I don't. To think of all the people in high school, who probably, I just, that's what kind of like drove me. Like I really don't think that that I was meant to necessarily be this guitar player, but I was gonna do it. So
Yeah, like it's really, I watched an
the change.
interview.
I really thought. I don't know. I I shouldn't even go down this road or something, but I mean, I really feel that someone has to, someone has to change things. Someone has to take a stand. So that's like my whole life. So like I felt I had to be in a band to change things. Now I don't want to say this way, but I mean, like I don't really like, I can't say being a band is like the greatest thing I've, I believe it. I like creating, creating is the big thing. But like, just saying and being on a team, I enjoy teams, my whole life, all I did was try to build teams, the next team after another. So to me, being a band is a team thing. And I cherish that like nothing else. But, saying, playing music on a stage, and maybe that's the best way I can frame it. Playing music on a stage isn't like, something I dream about, I mean, I did the best I could at it. Don't get me wrong. I took it really serious, but I'm not saying it's not something that I like said, that's the end, that's what I don't know. Just not like the pinnacle, playing on stage. I like probably, I think creating, I don't want to put it down, but creating, it's all, to me, it's about creating a scene, creating a live show, creating, whatever record, that's kind of what it's about, for me.
Is it being in the studio then? Like, do you enjoy the studio aspect of
Well,
being
I
in?
did, this is the, of course, life is a process. Life is, and so during the SSD, I was overwhelmed by a lot. I did my best, okay, because I was like, it's kind of the driver behind the band, the songwriter, and I'm just still fresh off playing guitar here, so what, throwing a lot at a 20-year-old kid or whatever, So I did my best. Certainly.
Well, we're talking about the records all these years later, so you did a pretty damn good job with them if we're still talking about them.
Yeah, I mean, I tried, I tried really hard. I did my best, but you know, uh I lost my train of thought. Yeah.
No, I think what you're saying is interesting because, like, yeah, when you first go into that studio, it is overwhelming, and especially trying to put your ideas down in a form, and you're not even thinking. I don't think. Well, I don't mean to put this on you, but
Yep.
like that we're going to be talking about this, 40 years
Absolutely not. No,
later.
no, no. I had not really considered that. I mean, I'm gonna throw some new ones out here. I really never had fear in my life during this whole period. Never was intimidated by anything. And now looking back on it, maybe I should have been, because I mean, what was I take? I took on a lot there, and now looking, like the fact that people are still talking about these records many years later. I'm not saying I didn't think it was possible. I did think it was possible. I didn't think it was like, I didn't plan on it. That's all I'm going to say. But I did think it was possible because, I, a lot in large respect, a lot of my straight edge stuff that I wrote, people read my lyrics and stuff, they might say, Jesus, guy writes about straight edge a lot. Everything is straight edge, I'm like this, but I felt like, it was something important to me and I wanted to talk about it. And I also felt like, I did, I never said it back then, but I mean, I was planting seeds, I was trying to plant seeds and I had a feeling that they might sprout at some point. And, that's what I was trying to do, but I wasn't, I don't want to make it sinister, but I was trying to like, I just was hoping that people would open their mind up a little bit and just think of things differently. And to me, the whole thing with straight edge was about, to me, it was about a choice. Okay. When I grew up, there was no choice. Okay. I didn't have a choice. Okay. I could be straight edge or I could, it's like basically either you want to be a guy who goes out on Friday and Saturday nights, or you want to be a guy that stays in the house, and I didn't want to be a guy that stayed in the house. I wanted to go out and with friends, I wasn't probably, wasn't some big super popular guy. So I had my limitations. But I didn't want to retreat all the way back into like monk land, so I so when I grew up, to me there wasn't that choice. Okay. A big thing for me was seeing the DC guys. Actually even started before meeting Ian, because I actually met Henry. Seeing Henry, Henry gave me a story about, he was with all these straight edge guys. I met him in New York City at Irving Plaza, like in like June of 1981, something like that. It really impressed me, man. Henry Rollins, shaved head and everything. And there was a bunch of these DC kids, X's on the hands. And I asked him, and he told me about this thing. He told me that everyone was straight edge, but the truth is later on, I found out he might have been the only guy at the time. Those other guys, they were not. I know that for a fact because later on people told me. So anyways, but he left, that image. It was a strong image of seeing those people, and it kind of matched with what I was going through. It matched with at that point. I was I'd already, started hanging around with these kids that I'm in the band with, SSD, and I kind of like, during high school, probably from the 8th grade to like 19 or something like that. Like used to drink on the weekends with my friends, in the woods. I wrote "Force Down Your Throat" was for me sitting in the woods, drinking a Schlitz beer, thinking like, oh my God, this stuff tastes disgusting. Warm Schlitz beer in the woods, I was like, this is disgusting. What am I doing? I mean, not the fact, I just didn't understand what I was doing. I questioned everything during that time, but I understood why I was doing it. I was doing it because I didn't want to sit in the house. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I completely understood what I was doing it because I didn't want to sit in the house. So what straight edge meant to me, what seeing Rollins and seeing those imagery was, you know what, you can kind of strut around and be proud that you're not drinking. Okay. So that was what, and it was a light bulb moment. I said, this is powerful, because, at that point, what did you associate with people that weren't drinking drugs? Maybe like the DARE movement or something, or the, something political with the politicians
A
involved
lot of
in it.
religion stuff too.
Something like that. Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
believe me, Friday night, sometimes I go to those religious places. I go to like the religious place would have this thing where you play street hockey, and I used to think to myself, this is like I'm 15. I just think, man, why do these people want me playing street hockey in their church? They're trying to get me into this fucking place, And I became very suspicious all along because I'm like, why the fuck am I doing this church? I'm not even this I'm Catholic. I'm in some different denomination. I don't even know what the fuck it was. And I'm like, what am I doing here? Something doesn't feel right, So yeah, I had to break free of that stuff. But so, straight edge to me was I could be straight and be proud, and I was very proud. And that's what I tried to promote with straight edge imagery, to be proud of it. And so I was thinking down the road, some kid in high school, he will be faced with the same decision, but he's going to say I'm straight edge. And you know what? He's going to go out on Friday and Saturday, and he's going to be at the same places those other people are, but he's not going to drink, or he's not going to be smoking weed or doing drugs. And you know what? He's going to be as cool as those other motherfuckers, And that's the vision that I saw in it. That's my vision. People might not like that. I'm not saying I never talked to Ian about that, but that was what I saw, And so I was throwing seeds thinking that maybe, even if one person grabbed it, I was really thinking that, I think that's a good thing. Like
Yeah.
I believe in straight edge more than I ever believed in it. And yet I'm probably in more trouble, more physical pain and more trouble than I've ever been, So for me to say that after everything I've been through, that I believe in straight edge more than anything, it's a big thing for me, So I don't have any regrets about it. I don't think, in many ways, I think we're a stepping stone band. I look online. I watched that thing on I watched this thing on what's it called, straight edge interviews on Instagram, and I read all the people. I just want to see, if they mention SSD and any of the influences, and really do I see it? Okay, which is interesting because it does tell me that that the work that I did was early on. It somehow must have got lost along the way or something, because I don't think it's remembered. And another thing, it's an important thing. I think I took the brunt. Ian took a lot of brunt of it because he didn't want anything to do with it really. So he took a lot of the shit that I created. I think I created a lot of shit that he had to answer for, and I never really said anything to him about it. I don't think we've had any deep discussions about it. I just felt, empowered enough that when I saw what I saw, and then, combining meeting Ian shortly after meeting Henry, and Ian's an amazing guy, great, amazing. Uh, you know, it just, uh, but he really didn't, he was not pushing straight edge, trust me, during those years at all. Yeah, when I knew him, he
He
was
put
not, he wrote the song. He did not want to go near that. And I think now looking back on it, I don't know. I mean, those guys stayed with me. Minor Threat stayed at my house and stuff like that. But I look back on it, I think that Brian Baker and the other guys might have been giving him some shit about it, Uh,
yeah. Well, I
because I
like.
read
Go
I
on. Sorry.
read stuff that I read. No, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No,
I
please.
cut me off when I want. I read stuff that Brian says something, and I think that Brian's impression of the whole Boston thing. This, I just think he was overwhelmed by it a little bit. The whole thing. But so who knows? I never sat down. In fact, that's a video I want to do, is just me and him riffing on some stuff that we never talked about. Because when we do get together, we have deep conversations. But I can't say we've ever riffed about the things we probably should talk about once in a while, just to like get them down on tape. But because I never, I wasn't like. Here's the other thing, like people like I didn't go around telling people how to live either. You know what I'm saying? That was not my thing. I was there to make a choice. You know what I'm saying? I wanted to establish the choice. Not just put it on the ballot. So to speak. I didn't get into the rules of straight edge. I didn't get into what you can't do, caffeine, this and that. But that wasn't what it was about to me. It's just about young kids kind of like not getting fucked up, maybe, and
Yeah.
I smoke a ton of weed right now,
Same.
because of my situation. And I don't think if I smoked weed early on, I don't see it as a positive, like I do it and I try to do it because, to keep myself alive, to be honest. That's why I'm doing it right now. That's how bad my situation is. I smoke weed right now to stay alive. I don't think it helps with the pain, but somehow it keeps me from not wanting to kill myself. And that's why I use it. I get a lot of anxiety. My back is so messed up right now. So, I think I have an actually excellent perspective of straight edge right now. I've been on more opiates than anyone. I've been on more opiates than you would even imagine. All prescribed, legally prescribed. I'm not putting out there that, I'm a junkie or anything, but I've been on more pills than I could describe to you. Okay. So I've seen things that I might not have expected to see when I was 19 years old. So I have, much more deep appreciation of things. Okay. And maybe the 20-year-old guy that wrote about straight edge in 10 songs or whatever, maybe there was some naivete in some of it, because I don't know what everyone's dealing with. I know that I'm dealing with a tough situation right now that I wouldn't wish on anyone. And stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm sorry you're dealing with that, because what you said earlier, what you did when you throw those seeds, like I'm one of those people that got those seeds. And like, yeah, I started smoking cannabis 10 years ago now when I was 30. So I'm not straight edge anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
But being straight edge when I was young made all the difference in my life.
Honestly, that's what I want to say this, but that's all I was supposed to get you to like 30.
Yeah.
that was my idea. If I can get someone to like 30, I'm doing pretty good,
Yeah.
Because growing up, it's a tough age,
Yeah.
It's a tough age. I'm not saying that I changed at 30, but I'm just saying, and I was thinking, like, even if I could just get people through some of those rough stages early on and get them to go out on Friday and Saturday night and feel proud, I don't give a fuck what they do when they're 23 or something, 30 or whatever. I just wanted to get through those teenage years with not feeling like they had to give into the pressures,
Mm-hmm.
And that, I mean, I actually didn't give into the pressures for a long time. And then I kind of gave into them, and I did, I guess, looking back on it, in many ways, I let myself down, because who knows, maybe I should have.
Well, like you said, it's a long life, and you don't know where it's going to take you. And, the things, I definitely would at 15 or like at 19 and 20, was like, I'm going to be straight edge for the rest of my life. And there's no question in my mind at that point. And then I was on all these crazy.
I felt the same way, by the way, I felt the same way. I mean, how I fell into this situation is just, it's almost like not to cut you off here. I just think I cut
please.
you off, but I mean, I was thinking, like, I joke about it, like, I've actually made little memes that, I'm like the fucking poster boy for OxyContin. I am, in many ways I am, the timing was unbelievable. My back situation showed up right when that drug was becoming popular. But like, I can't say here that I've had my run-ins with Purdue Pharma. Don't get me wrong. I know everyone's anti Purdue Pharma, anti what's the name? The Heckler family. I can't think of it.
Seckler,
Seckler,
Scheckler, yeah,
whatever,
yeah,
you know. But I mean, once again, I understand the thing. A drug company, their goal is to sell drugs. You know, somewhere along the way, I gotta believe there was a engineer, a scientist who believed that he could help uh, people in pain. You know, help their lives with a sincere mission. You know, I believe that. I honestly believe. I have to believe that. Number one, because I believe in science. I believe in engineers, and I believe engineers change lives. You know, so I believe that. But you know, in any business, when it gets, you know, we're talking pills. I mean, how easy to sell a pill? It's like selling the, you know, it's easier to sell Coke, like tonic and soda. You know, because soda, you get all the transportation costs. You know, pills, there's no weight to them. You ship them all over the place. It's unbelievable. You know, so what a great thing if you can find a pill that everyone wants to take. I get it. So I understand the business, and I'm ambivalent to it. You know, I don't like what they did. Am I a victim in many ways? Maybe I might be a victim of that whole thing. But at the same time, I had this unbelievable pain that wasn't anywhere near what it is now, by the way.
yeah,
And I thought it was overwhelming me, you know, and I look back, you know why I thought it was overwhelming? Because I wanted to be normal, okay? You know, which is funny too, because I wrote this song called Not Normal. I mean, I wanted to be normal. So all these songs come around and kind of like, you know, come back at me. But I mean, uh, you can't predict where your life's gonna go and stuff like that. But I mean, I thought I'd be straight, you know, and I'm not even safe. I'm not even declaring by the rules of straight edge that having to take all these painkillers was really violating straight edge either. I don't really give a fuck, to be honest. I'm just saying, you know, you got to do what you got to do, you know, and you know, there should be never. Here's what I feel kind of weird about this one. I would hate to think I would now, you know, I want to create this choice with straight edge using Ian's song, whatever, pulling out. And maybe someone else would have done the same thing, by the way. Who knows? I'm sure someone else would have ran off with it, whatever. But my thing was, you know, I would hate to think now if someone had reverse peer pressure and
mm,
really, you know, needed medications and was saying it didn't take them because they wanted to be straight edge, you know. So it's a slippery slope. And, you know, I don't want to get into the rules of what it is. I think everyone needs to do what they got to do for them. I'm just saying, you know, this, in my opinion, marijuana, I've seen people growing up that smoked marijuana and they weren't the most ambitious people in life. Okay. And I can tell you right now, part of the reason I smoke, I probably use it. I don't smoke, I eat it. I do whatever I have to do to it. That, you know, is because I'm, you know, I'm just trying to get to the next day, man. You
yeah,
know, so is it
yeah,
escapism? It's what it sure fucking is, you know. Is it couch lock? Probably, you know, but you know, I'm in a bad situation. I can't think of it any worse because now the whole medical community is kind of turning their back on me. You can cut all this medical shit out, by the way.
no, it's
I'm just
fine,
trying to give you the
please,
real, you know, gut to the, you know, from the heart interview here that um anyways, I that's not my intention. My intention is to inspire, enlighten, educate, whatever. You know, I'm just trying to get people, you know, to think things differently. You know, but they got to think it through themselves. You know, I've never been the kind of guy like I don't do many of these interviews and this stuff because I mean I don't want people to listen to me, read me, or whatever, and then kind of like, you know, I want them to think for themselves. You know, I want them to figure it out on their own. But I'm trying to give them some, you know, helpful hints along the way or something, you know, tell them what I experienced or whatever, tell them to be proud. You know, if you don't want to drink, be proud. You don't want to drink, you know, if you want to drink or smoke, go drink and smoke when you're 16 or whatever, you know, I'm just saying, I didn't really think I wanted to do that, you know, and I felt I kind of went down that trap. Hey, I made my choices, you know, but establishing a straight edge was a choice that I was going to let someone else be there for them, you know, so it was like, you know, it's like my gift to them, whatever.
yeah. No, I think straight edge for me as a kid was the ultimate escape hatch. Like it finally, like you're saying, like it gave me a way to tell people, like, well, you're a dork for doing this shit. No, I'm cool for not doing this shit. You know, as opposed to like completely reversing the
Yeah,
script
flip
on
the
people.
switch, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. So
exactly.
it's a, you know, it's a mind fuck, you know, but it's
Yeah,
a good mind fuck because it's getting people thinking, right? You know, like, hey, you're 16 years old. I don't think you need to be smoking weed, really, man. It's you know, it's not going to help you. I don't think hey, I'm into taking things that might be performance enhancing. I honestly don't think at that point, if you're real young, unless you're, you know, whatever. I don't want to be a doctor here, whatever. Do what you got to do.
yeah,
I'm just saying, if I was 16, I wouldn't be, you know, I don't even want to smoke it right now or vape it or chew it or eat it. But, you know, I've done this experiment, which is really scary, but um, I've been off opiates. I've withdrawn from opiates probably 30 times, okay, at home by myself. And I don't know if you ever know about it, no friends, but it's brutal. Probably the toughest thing you ever do in life. I've done it 30 times at home by myself, no help. I've ended up in the hospital maybe 3 times, just feeling shitty, not like ODing, you don't OD from whatever. So I've done it unassisted many times, but in getting off the opiates and stuff, uh when they became legalized in Massachusetts, I got my license. Over the years, people kept on telling me, get the license, get the license. I'm like, man, I wrote the fucking album, Get It Away. Why would I want to start smoking? Give me a break, I don't want to put shit in my lungs. I still hate it. I cringe thinking, I'm sitting here puffing my vape. I'm like, there's a lot of people watch this interview and fucking getting a good kick out of this one. But but I don't care because, I'm not afraid of it. I'm not ashamed of anything either. But, this is what I have to deal with. And I'm thinking, what am I? My lungs must be angry as shit right now, thinking. I mean, so anyways, but when I've gone off of it, okay, the pain is so overwhelming. My life is so unbelievably tough that I want to kill myself, and that's being honest, it's not, don't people shouldn't be like, oh, call, it's just reality, that's what I'm facing. And, this is a guy who never had anxiety his whole life. Okay. Never tried, smoke drugs or anything like stuff. Never drank, well, I drank, I told you in high school, but, and now I'm faced with trying to figure out how to live, really, how to wake up every day and want to get through the day, and, somehow the marijuana or cannabis or whatever gets me from A to B. It gets me from point A to, like I wake up, I try to get to like 11 a.m. in the morning. This is a terrible way to live. From 11 a.m. I try to get to like 3 p.m. From 3 p.m. I try to get to 8, I just try to get to like bedtime, and then I do the same thing the next day. It's a terrible life, but it's a life. It's like the cross I bear, and it is what it is. I got to face it, right? I can't run from it. I'm not on the opiates right now. And the opiates did help me. I got a pension from my job. I was an engineer. I worked 35 years at GE. So, in many ways, Purdue Pharma maybe helped me get my pension. Now if I was to go back, this is around 2000, and, maybe if I retired at 40, maybe I'd be healthy right now. And I'll tell you that I'd want to be healthy right now. And I'd rather be broke and be healthy right now, which is sad because that's tough being broke. But,
Yeah. Yeah.
but anyways, I shouldn't even be going down this road.
No,
I used
I used to make weed documentaries. I made medical marijuana documentaries for Vice. That's what I started doing before I did wrestling.
Well, it's a powerful drug. It's a powerful drug, and it's a, I believe in the molecule. I definitely believe in the molecule. I don't, I've tried to even grow it myself. I think it's terribly difficult to rely on a piece of decaying plant, right? Because there's so much thing it could be mold, it could be so many things, in it that's not good for you. I think it's, I'm glad it's regulated. I'm glad that, but I think it's something that should be studied. I believe the molecule to me, it represents like almost like an anxiety medication, like a Xanax or something, and I think it's safer than Xanax. So, I believe it's safer. It's a tough, I think it's a tough, it's just, the way I have to use it's tough. I have to use it all the time. I haven't used it I tried to, I didn't want to be, for this interview, I stopped like 4 hours ago or something, but usually an all day thing for me,
Yeah. Well, it's the first plant humans cultivated. It's like, like the history of this thing is like, we've got cannabinoid receptors all over our body, like it's something that, like you're saying, it needs more study because
it needs more
there's a
study.
lot of benefits that can come from this thing.
Now here's a, if you're a smart guy about cannabis, I have allergies. I've had allergies to like tree and, and I feel that it's not helping me at all. It just intuitively, it can't be helpful to someone who's allergic to grass and mold and all the shit, right? So I've gone to my allergist asking questions. The medical community is not even prepared to answer these questions to me. Okay. So, if you think about it, I don't want to be doing something that's making like, say I can't see the inside of my skin, the inside, but how if my insides is like, irritated from it, just because you're right. I believe that the mechanisms are similar to the nerve, it attaches to the nerves with some receptors, the same kind of thing as the opiate thing, in a way. Believe me, I think there's a commonality there. Not like, I'm not saying they're brothers and sisters, but there's linkages, certainly having gone through opiate withdrawals and stuff like that. They both affect your nerves in a way, So, um, anyways, it's hey, both were plants. Poppy plant was there forever too. It's probably the only thing to this date that has been developed to treat pain really effectively. So, I think as scientists, they should be doing a little bit better in both areas, to be honest. And they should be like taking their cues from the molecule, the THC molecule, taking the cues from they should be able to modify the opiate molecule to make it so it doesn't people OD or something. Fortunately, to kill the pain, it's probably going to make people fucked up, and people are going to always want to abuse it. Therefore, you never get, here's back to I'm going full circle now to circle back to Purdue Pharma. Right now, name me one company that's going to invest in a pain medicine right now for people like me. No one's going to do it. They get sued. It's unpopular. So in a way, this whole opiate thing is kind of, in a way, affected pain patients like me, because no one's going to be looking for help. Okay. And I'm not saying opiates are the answer, because they're clearly not the answer. They became less effective over time for me, building up a tolerance that was like 700 milligrams a day, so that's a lot of Oxycontin pills to take, oxycodone. So, it's not the, anyways, I don't have the answers, but I do believe scientists, hopefully will keep on working at it and make people's lives better, because what I'm going through, I mean, talking, make a documentary on my whole, I've had eight spine surgeries, complete disaster. My life's been destroyed. And, right now I'm just trying to salvage what I can out of it, and, that's why the whole, I guess, I do see my mortality, to so to speak. We could debate or take odds on when it is, I don't think it's too far away. So I did want to kind of straighten some things out, I do want to do some interviews like this to put them down on tape, believe it or not. Maybe I'll plant another seed along the way, but I intentionally, like a year ago, I did a couple podcasts, get them on, hopefully you guys do a good, as long as you live, to keep these out in space. Cause I think it's, in a way, it kind of makes you immortal in a sense, at least, I mean, who are we? We're really just, what, it's not my body that's really me, really. It's like who you are. So if you capture part of me on tape, that's not a bad thing. That's the way I look at it, so that's kind of why I decided to kind of come out of my shell, so to speak, a little bit. And, I am taking the time to kind of celebrate the band. I've always been a guy where the band was going to always look forward. I never really dwelled and looked backwards. And that's, you could say that's good, bad, or whatever, but that's the way I was, in everything I did in life. I always looked forward to the next design at GE, or the next, it wasn't like rest on your laurels or whatever. I think, always going forward. That's not that's actually not a positive thing. Once in a while, it's good to enjoy things a little bit. See, I gave you a little hint of what I was early on. Everything's work, work, work. And maybe I didn't enjoy things along the way enough, I'm big into the team thing. I love, all of the things I did at my job at GE were all teams. So in many ways, I want to, I want people to feel that I appreciate them.
Well, I definitely appreciate you, and I hope you're here for a lot longer. And because we got to do at least 2 more parts to this thing, because I'm going to talk to you all night.
Yeah.
But like you were saying earlier, like,
oh, I already blow the whole interview. We already passed it.
No.
Oh, is it already too late or something? I talked too long. Sorry.
No, dude. No, I'm just saying that we're going to go on a lot longer. But believe me, we're not going to finish tonight, because
I feel like I did touch upon some parts with you right now.
Yeah.
That you probably, I probably haven't given you enough about the band stuff, and I gave you stuff about things my wife probably is not going to want me talking about, but I wanted to get them out there. I don't know.
Well, I respect you so much. Like, first of all, is this like idealized person in a band that I grew up idolizing and looking up to, but I think more now as an adult and looking how honest you are and how important truth and reality is to you. And and sharing your truth and kind of like letting people in. Like, I think I respect you so much, Al, because of all this shit. And like you were saying, just to bring it back to the music thing and immortality, the DC guys, Ian especially, they've always kind of put it on, well, Boston, but you, as far as making it a movement, and
Oh,
like
they did say that?
oh yeah, Ian says it a
Yeah.
lot. Ian,
Oh, really?
yeah,
I never say that to me because I'd like to have that conversation where I think he's mad at me about it, because I know he didn't push it, and I gotta admit, it bothered me a little bit because I think it would have been better coming from him, because it ended up being like I felt, and this is the conversation I would like to have because I felt like it ended up being like maybe something like an aggravation to him, and I didn't want to cause that to him, and it certainly what you also got to understand, we weren't lauded as like a band that everyone wanted to hang around with. You know what I'm saying? You carry the straight edge moniker, and I let's take it down to my band, like to clear things up too. Straight edge. I didn't go around to my band and say, "Hey, you guys, you got to be straight edge." Chris, you got to be straight edge. Spring. I just said I'm straight edge. You know what I'm saying? That would be so wrong of me to tell. I didn't go around and tell them. They got to live their own life, and I'm not their babysitter. I can only do what I got to do, set the example I set, and everyone's going to live their own life. I'm not a preacher. I didn't like to, I don't like to, like I said, I don't like to do a lot of interview stuff. That I'm just a guy, but I'm an honest guy. Be as honest as I can. I think, there's levels of, there's levels of honesty, and sometimes I'm painfully honest. It doesn't help me, and didn't help. I can't say straight edge helped our band. I mean, I'm glad I wouldn't change a thing of it, but it wasn't like I just want people to understand it wasn't cool to be a straight edge band in 1982. It really was. I mean, it wasn't. I think maybe when they got to the point of the crew, the youth crew and stuff like that, maybe some of the seeds started growing. But like I mean, there's a lot of pressure. Like I told you, I wanted to blow Boston up, right? Even maybe my guys in my own band who maybe wanted to play the Rat. We had this club called the Rat Skull, the famous underground. That was like where that pre-scene was. Maybe he wanted to be there. Maybe all the guys in Gangrene and I don't want to put words in my mouth. I'm just to throw the names out. Fat Fuse, Jerry's Kids, Gangrene. Maybe that's where they wanted to play. Maybe they just wanted to. Maybe they just wanted to be the next La Peste. You know what I'm saying? I didn't want to be the next La Peste. You understand? So I'm saying, that's like not an easy torch to carry. I mean, I did not want to be the next La Peste or the next pastiche. I wanted to blow it up, literally, and I wanted to change things. I wanted them to say, these people are different, or whatever. They're doing something different here. That was completely intentional. And I'm not so sure if the entire scene was going to go along with that all the time, because and I'm only saying that, I'm not tooting my horn, more like saying that it wasn't popular. I don't think, wasn't like I wasn't, people weren't coming up to me and congratulating me or saying it. Like, even the guy who wrote the song wasn't even saying anything to me, If anything, he was fucking, so, I'm trying to paint the picture here. Even the guy that wrote the song wasn't saying, good work, Al. Well, my band wasn't saying good work. The people that interviewed me wasn't saying good work. The other Boston bands certainly were saying good work. So I wasn't being necessarily applauded for anything I was doing. So
yeah, I think the thing is also Ian had to live in it the whole way through. Where every
he had
show,
it way more than, I mean, he every day. I like I said, I probably caused problems for him.
well, yeah, like Poison Ideas sending him super beers in the mail, telling him to drink
Were
it.
they really?
Like, yeah, they were like, well, Jerry A does that. Well, you've seen that.
I'm friends with him I'm friends with him on Facebook. I didn't know that he had that side to him.
Well, he wasn't as he just, I think, wanted to fuck with it more than a lot of ire. But there's that Ian MacKaye 12-inch where it's a picture of their asshole. It's like with all the flies around it and stuff.
I didn't know that. He now I can tell you. You see me saying that, I could see he seems like his album imagery is kind of like a fuck with you kind of imagery.
Yeah, very much so. And I think Ian had to deal with the youth crew thing when that was popping off. Like, and
tell me about that. I need to know, how did he deal with that? How did that go down? I don't even know. I missed the youth. Here's the thing.
Yeah,
I'm mad about it because the youth. I would like to see some of my plants. I'm joking.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
joking.
but it's
No,
true.
no,
Like,
but I mean, I missed it. I kind of like was right. I was graduating college right around that time. I used to come in and sneak in to see like bands every once in a while. I wasn't like completely out of it, but I did sell all my equipment. I bought a jet ski, and but I used to, but I mean, no one tipped me off and said, dude, you got to go see Use It Today. Or, I would have liked that tip, because I really would have enjoyed it. I used to go to the Warp Tour and, occasionally, I definitely saw their second band, the Shelter band. I saw a Warp Tour, the Shelter was around there. So, I mean, I was aware of them by that point, but I wish I saw the initial Used Crew. But see, the other thing, when they came through Boston, if they did play Boston, the scene had already moved to the Rat. They transformed from the pure kind of thing in many ways to this like thing that I was trying to avoid all these years. I don't know, but I can't comment on it because I wasn't there and I wasn't. I just at that point I wanted to get away from it. I needed to get away from it because it wasn't what I had kind of planned or thought about. It was kind of drifted away from my vision.
yeah, I wasn't there for it either, and I think it's just
Yeah.
my perspective comes from, reading what people have said about it and talking to some of these people. But it seems like, yeah, Ian was not down for it. I think he thought it was fine. Like, people are going to
Yeah.
do what they do. It's their choice to make
Yes.
this sort of thing. But I don't think he felt like it was part of his world, And I don't mean, I don't. He said as much to me, like it felt like it was something completely removed from what he was doing. But
It
and then
was, and I felt that too. So, I mean,
yeah,
like yeah. Now you confirm what like I used to like read whatever I could feel it. Uh, but I didn't want that. I'm going to put this on the record. I wanted him to kind of come to me and say, "Good work, Al."
it's amazing how he's always had. Like, I've had so many people on this podcast where Ian and Ian's approval and just Ian's presence is just such a huge part of people's lives, and it's been like this for decades now. But, like, David Bazan, who's Pedro the Lion, was on the podcast and talked about how there's this sort of inner Ian Mackay that he has debates about when it comes time to talk about music industry business and all these sorts of things, where he has an internalized Ian Mackay, like people would have their internalized Christ that they have these conversations with.
Yeah, I don't. I can't say I have take when I said that thing about I wish he pulled me aside, only because I was like I'm pretty self aware, at all points, meaning like taking inventory of myself too along the way. Okay, so I knew that I was causing problems for him. Okay, so all I meant is I kind of wish he said it's okay, but he never said that, like. So I don't know I never really knew what he thought, really. I just wish he said it's okay. Hey, you're causing problems for me, kid, but it's okay. But as far as approval, I think he sets a very high standard. Okay. But early on, I realized I couldn't seek his approval, because, I wouldn't want to go down those roads. Like, everyone says, I think I even said it like, dude, I'm not gonna stop fucking broads because you said something like that. You know what I'm saying? It's like I didn't like, I don't have that relationship with this guy, that like I think that what he says I'm gonna follow. I don't follow anyone. Why am I gonna stop following him? I didn't get into straight edge to follow another set of rules. You know what I'm saying? Not at all. I'm like I really do consider myself a freedom guy, like, literally freedom, but I'm just responsible. Like, I realize there's some things you got to do in life and you just got to suck it up and do it. It's just because we live in a society where it's just not you. It's not about you. You're not just the only guy in the world. There's other people around you, and this whole planet doesn't work if you don't think like that way. If you just, it's too many people that do think it's just the world is them and it's just them. It doesn't work. So it's important to be self-aware, but I don't even know where I'm going.
Well, and now
Lost
straight.
myself again.
Well, now straight edge is something even bigger than that. Like, you're talking about going on those Instagram stories and seeing these kids not have any relationship to the history of the straight edge, but, like, CM Punk, the pro wrestler, is probably responsible for more kids hearing about straight edge now than Minor Threat is, because he was on TV to millions of people each week preaching straight edge
Were you
stuff.
watching him before you got on here? I said I watched him. His match was on. I go, he's not chimed in. He's probably watching this match right now.
No,
Oh,
I haven't
oh,
watched in a while, but I
okay.
definitely have put in my time of being. That was
Do you
actually the worst
do you
interview.
like know him well?
No, it was the worst interview I've ever done in my life. I interviewed him one time for
Oh,
my old TV show, and it was brutal. It was
Let me
so
ask you, do you think he's sincere about straight edge?
definitely a hundred
He
percent
is.
sincere. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, but
Because
he's
I wasn't sure because, I grew up, you a wrestling fan?
a huge wrestling fan.
Okay. So I grew up a huge wrestling fan. Okay. But I mean, I go back to like Chief J Strongbow,
Do you ever see Kevin
Pedro
Sullivan
Morales.
wrestle? Because
I
Kevin
have,
Sullivan's
yeah.
from Boston, right?
Yeah, he is. Yeah. But
Yeah,
he's like, like Kevin Sullivan didn't become popular until he went to like
WCW.
WCW, you know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? He was like a stiff in the WWF, So I was a big fan, and I was one of those guys that, went along with the thing like it's not it's like it might be it's not fake, it's real, like I mean there's like semi-realism we had to kind of like create to make it like justifiable that why we like this bullshit, and I was very one of those guys that like, my father used to take me when I was like, 14. I can't only think what my father was thinking when I'm going to Boston Garden, seeing San Martino and stuff, and Freddie Blassie and stuff. Because I gotta admit at this point, I have a whole different outlook on it. I think the athleticism has gone way beyond what it was when I started. So you certainly can appreciate that. In fact, I marvel at it, and I say, man, these guys are taking, because of my back. I say these guys are taking, and plus I follow some of those guys on YouTube, and I know they've had some tough injuries. The guy that just died, Ruiz and Ramon just died, stuff. So they had a tough life, and they take, the bumps they take. I mean, based on my spine, I just saying to myself, man, their backs must be fucked up, And I listen to Steve Austin's podcast and stuff too, so I know they take big bumps.
yeah, no, they definitely. But it's like made this documentary series years ago, and one of the people we interviewed was Austin Theory, who's now having a huge run in WWE.
Oh,
And
he's got a big push right now,
yeah, and he
right?
was
Big push by Vince, I think,
a
right?
huge push by Vince. Yeah, and
Yeah.
he was like, we're talking the first day, and he's like, "Oh, I'm straight edge," and I'm like, "Oh, are you hardcore? You
Austin Theory,
Yeah, yeah,
really?
yeah."
Wow.
He's like, "Yeah, no, I'm completely straight edge. Fuck drugs."
Wow.
And I'm like, "Oh, do you know punk? You know hardcore?" He's like, "Not at all." Like it was
Really?
completely separate for him, this whole straight edge thing. But
He's inspired by CM Punk.
CM Punk, yeah, CM Punk,
Wow.
and I think there's like Avril Lavigne also used to claim straight edge very early
Yeah.
on, and X up
So
too.
CM Punk's a messenger. That's a good thing, Like because I wasn't sure if it was shtick, try to say the right word, shtick, because like I mean, that's what I was trying to say, like wrestling. When you if I watch them right now, so much of it's where it's like the arm grab and it's like So when I look at it now, I'm like the enhancement, is just so over the top. It's like, and I guess it was there when I was a kid too. I mean, Chief Jay was doing his stuff, but I'm like, so it's hard for me to get into it now, but I still monitor it. I think wrestling can be possibly tied into like what's going on in the world today right now.
Absolutely,
Like the believability of what's real and what's not real. I
kayfabe.
mean, there
Yep.
is, right?
Yeah, the
Has
whole
to be.
concept. Yeah, 100%. Like Trump developed this whole character during his WrestleMania run. Like he learned how to cut a promo. He
Yeah.
saw what worked. He was shaving Vince McMahon's head, Stone Cold Steve Austin style, in the middle of the ring. And I, from the people I talked to that were there at that time, like writers and things like that, they talked about how much of a student Trump was and how he just kind of was observing everything and
Oh, he's a
very polite.
student.
Yeah,
He's
very.
he's been a performer. Like I followed him in the New York Post in the early '80s when he used to go to New York and stuff. He was a very popular New York Post, and
Mhm.
I don't know what TV shows like Geraldo Rivera, like those kind of like
Yeah.
shows that were on the '80s. Maybe you'd see him on there. So but I mean, that kind of guy was always dismissive in this culture. He was never worshipped. He was
Yes.
never treated like a god. So in many ways, wrestling maybe in the popularity of wrestling used to be a fringe thing, right? It'd be my father and my dad, and 13,000 at the Garden or whatever, but it wasn't like, I don't know what the numbers are now, but it wasn't like, obviously, right? It's not like this. So, and that, you know, it's entertainment, right? But I mean, you have to believe it in a way, kind of, right? To really believe it. Otherwise, you're going to sit there and laugh. Oh, look at Roman Reigns, fake that thing or something, some of those neck drops where they don't even touch the neck, So I'm saying, like you have to almost believe it, like just same as Trump, you have to believe him. I think we're in that kind of part of, we're in that kind of part of
Human development, I
human
guess.
evolution now
Yeah.
because of media and these guys, I mean, I follow right-wing media a lot. I don't know if I track it, but I watch it a lot. Okay. And you have to have a real good, you have to have real good, like, rejection. You could get sucked. I can't get sucked in it, but I could definitely see how other people could get pulled right into it. I listen to Steve Bannon. Uh, he's very good at manipulating people's minds and planting seeds. Talk about planting seeds. Fucking Steve Bannon's planting seeds every day, seeds of doubt, seeds of, right now he's planting seeds that, I'm sure they are, right now the seeds he's planting is that, Ukraine's the most corrupt nation in the world. And I'm sure they're pretty corrupt. Usually those Baltic countries, there's a lot of corruption, but they're trying. They're trying to be democratic. They're trying. Russia's not trying to do anything. Russia's, that's the big flip in this whole thing, right? Right wing isn't about freedom. It's never been about freedom. Right wing is about oppression. So the fact that these people are hooked up with Trump and screaming about freedoms for mandates and all this other stuff, it's so bullshit, because the first thing Trump would do is take away the press, take away the free press, take away all their rights. And these idiots can't even figure that out. It's like history says who they are. History doesn't say, history says exactly who everyone is. We know who they are, but yet they don't believe it, So
It's almost like it's perfectly timed for like kind of the fall of religion is the rise of these sort of people that fill the void that religion would have filled in a lot of people's lives in some cases, like these sermons that are weekly podcasts now or YouTube shows, and these, they're promising you something, they're offering
MAGA
you.
is a religion. MAGA is a
Yeah,
religion,
yeah, a
No doubt it's
terrifying
a religion.
terrifying religion.
It's a terrifying religion. You're right. Biggest threat to democracy. Democratic Republic, no doubt in my mind, and people, like I know there's another stuff, like I pound Trump constantly 24/7, right? And my wife's like, what, man, people, and I know that I wear people out, people don't like to, but that's the way I was with straight edge, what I'm saying? I mean, I'm a, and we're coming out with these records on, we're releasing the records on Trust Records. So we've got some quotes coming out, and some people say, militaristic. And I just heard this as a quote, and I'm like, man, I get that tag a lot, but I get it. What I'm saying? I get the tag, but I don't think it really represents me. But, I'd say it's more like undeterred or something, like I'm not going to just stop, I'm just going to back down. I'm going to keep on going, persevere, but I'm militaristic. I don't know. I hope I'm not, hope I'm not, I hope I'm not shooting people and killing people when they don't agree with me. I'm saying? When I hear militaristic, that's what I think. So, I don't know.
Well, and I think that's because that's where straight edge kind of went for a minute, or at least that's the perception of where straight edge did go there. Hardline straight edge was definitely pretty fucking crazy. Some of the shit people were getting up to, the actual movement that was called hardline within hardcore, but I think what you were doing was offering people, like we were saying, like an escape hatch, like another way, and that's the thing. Like straight edge now is just so many different things to so many different people.
Yeah, I know that straight edge has gone through so many transitions, the Earth crisis, I see their reference to quite a bit, so it's taken a lot of different incarnations, I don't even know, maybe it's the right wing straight edge movement, I don't know, but I'm happy that there's a choice, that's what I want kids to have a choice, really, to me, I got to this thing, to me, the kids will say it's about killed, that title is about kids telling kids. That's what it's supposed to mean.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, we want to be heard. We'll just, we don't, it's like, I'm, extremely frustrated that, growing up, that I don't think people really, like even right now, everything going on, who's even thinking about the kids really, I mean, thinking about the babies because it's political, right? Babies, but how about the kids, no one cares about a 16-year-old kid that's in trouble or something, they care about these babies,
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's
well, that's the thing about that record is it was in that kind of moment in hardcore, when hardcore comes in, like you're saying, like you didn't have to go to a club, you could rent a PA and set up your own hall, like kids could have their say, like I was 16 years old and we were putting on our own shows and spaces, and like that's the other thing, like forget about straight edge and where that went.
That still goes on today. I see a lot of that, which is great,
Yeah, and that's the thing.
That's the good thing about the I think, you think about it, like really hardcore. Well, I mean, there's not too many other kind of forms of music that's really doing that, right? Where just doing their own shows, I don't think, right?
No, and it's really like it's like the first scene that I know of. Like maybe there are other scenes, and around the world or something, but
Yep.
where you have like, the kids just giving each other numbers. You're like, here, call this person to get a show, and just like you build your own network. And what kids say is important, and what young people do is important. And like, there's no like you're saying with SSD, like the motivation isn't to become a rock star. The motivation is just to do it.
Just get out there and do it, and then do the best you can at. Like my attitude with the band was just treat every record with a separate record and try to do your best you can. That's all we did. We'd really really try to, like, even as if you look, people say, if you listen to record, the band, we started off, wasn't many bands around us, then bands started playing a lot faster than us. And I, quite frankly, I didn't think we played that great fast. Like I felt that we were more a powerful band, a little bit slower. So we kicked it back a little bit, and tried to find our groove. I call it the power groove. We
Mhm.
tried to find what we did. And now, if you look at the evolution of hardcore now, it's even more different. It's got, it's taken so many different directions, but that's good. We started out, like I said, I think the Ramones were kind of a trans, they transcended towards our generation, then Black Flag, and then every subsequent hardcore scene or mix or whatever has their own little stamp on it, which is great. I personally am surprised. The one thing when we were going, I grew up, like I told you, Van Halen, ACD. I don't know. I saw Judas Priest and bands like that, but the term heavy metal wasn't. It's just starting the head banging thing, around that early 80 thing or something. But I was surprised that, how hardcore and metal has gotten very close, metalcore, hardcore and stuff. Because back when I started, the metal scenes weren't very appreciative or, respectful of our scene. It was very separate, So I guess that's good, but it's interesting. I didn't see that coming necessarily, because I thought the rock, the metal bands wouldn't have any crossovers or whatever. But
Well, there's that whole period, I guess, in the late '80s where crossover happens in DRI, and actually, it's weird. I was reading in America's Hardcore Today,
yep.
the Stephen Blush book, that DYS was almost signed to Elektra at one point.
Maybe, I don't know.
That's
I
so
don't know.
weird. Like, I guess they would have been
Yeah.
a crossover band at that point if they had gotten signed, and that was apparently what led to the breakup. But it's this weird thing that kind of happens in the late '80s where you're right, the scenes do kind of converge a lot more, and now today they're like practically built on top of each other.
Right. And like, I know, I mean, I don't know, I think I know your band still tours or anything like that. So I'm not aware of I mean, I've watched the videos of the bands and see things, but I mean, I used to reference Max Rock and Roll to get my information and stuff like
Yep.
that. So I'm not as, aware as I should be of all this, probably like because of my age, and it makes sense, that I'm not aware, but I follow it, I watch it, and I see, I like to see the evolution. I'm surprised maybe the metallic evolution, as those, I think they've converged almost in a way, like metal and hardcore, like, I mean, which is good.
Well, you even go back to like Motorhead. Like Lemmy would always prefer to be called a punk than a metal band. Like they, it goes back to, and also like, new wave of British heavy metal really gets kicked off when punk starts kicking off.
Right,
And
right.
and it really kind of, I guess, provides the infrastructure for it.
Well, I mean, you can tell, like, I think all those, like a lot of the Guns N' Roses bands and Seattle bands were all in, punk. So I mean, yeah, like I said, everything builds on each other. I mean, I think those Guns N' Roses records were based on them growing up on punk rock, and stuff. So maybe Metallica, I don't know,
Yeah.
but it definitely. I mean, I know that we've had a lot of people cite us as maybe people having the record, back then.
Well, it's funny because like I was listening to, I'm one of the people that provided a quote for the Get It Away reissue. And I
You
was listening,
did? Oh,
yeah,
shit.
and I was listening to it.
You said militaristic, probably, right?
No, believe me, no,
No,
I
I'm joking.
definitely,
Actually, I gotta cut that out.
but I did talk about how it's the ferociousness of it, and like I listened to Get It Away, like I guess 25 times in a row that day, just coming up with a
Yeah.
quote, and like you hear that in grind, you hear that in death metal and thrash metal, like that kind of attack that, and just kind of like
Now, let me ask you: do you think it sounded like anyone else when you
no,
heard that? Like,
no,
does it sound like another
I
record?
feel it's a complete break. Like I feel like
Yeah.
Minor Threat was still continuing in a punk. You know, obviously they were breaking from it, doing this hardcore thing,
Right.
but it's still like it comes out of punk, you know, and Black Flag certainly comes out of punk, you know, with what they're doing.
Yeah.
And even the Bad Brains a little bit too, like comes out of, but I think SSD is like the first time that it's something that's like completely alien, like a completely new thing that is just like melody, virtuosity, all these sort of things that are like so
Lack of melody, right?
well, but that's the thing is like, but it's like
Yeah.
it, but that's the thing that I loved about it. Like, and that's the thing that
Yeah.
I have a lack of melody, you know, I don't need the melody, you know, like that's what I fell in love with was that idea that it's just power, you know, like, and obviously that's the name of the double LP, but like,
Yeah.
that's the thing when I heard it, when I heard those songs, I'm just like, oh, it's just pure power. And that's what's
Mm.
being put forward in this band. Um,
Yeah, like I mean, I think that record's a good a good maybe a peak. I think I've said that before because but at the time it's hard to we had just added Francois to the band right when that record was kind of being made. And, it was kind of a transitional phase, how to work him into the writing and stuff. And once again, I try to tell people it wasn't like that record was being lauded, like we weren't getting, like we weren't, you know what I'm saying? So
yeah.
like no one was telling me, hey, you're onto something here, So I wasn't getting the feedback that I needed, to know. I mean, don't get me wrong, when we play live, it always felt right, it always felt good, but uh like the fans we had dedicated fans, don't get me wrong, but I'm not saying that anyway. There was tons of people, you could see people showing up at shows, but it wasn't like any people that were trying to wasn't, it just felt we weren't getting a lot of positive feedback.
Well, and I feel, you know, and I think it's funny too because it's obvious how influential it was at the time, but you can never really appreciate that when you're living in it. You know, like I feel, even in my experience with it, like you never realize what's happening while you're living in it. It's only years later when you look back upon it, you're like, oh, geez, that went places, and obviously,
Honestly, it is the truth. I felt so different. I felt I had to tweak the formula a little bit. Like the songs did, the songs, like I felt here's basically what is it. I chased trying to figure out, you're a vocalist. I wrote guitars. Okay. I'm not a vocalist. I don't sing. So I wrote lyrics, but I didn't say, Springer, here's how I want to sing it, like most normal songwriters would write, I'd say, hey, Springer, here's how I want to sing it. Well, I just hand him the lyrics and this is how most hardcore bands do it, right? And he just had to fit those lyrics into what I played, right? Well, that's
yes,
not the way to do it, really. When you really come down to it, that's not so that was my formula. I'm like, I got to improve upon this somewhere. And I said, I really felt the singing had that part of the singing had to improve upon, like how we mold the vocals to vocals and lyrics to music. And that's kind of where we went after that. If I'd known that I should have kept that disassociation, that same disassociation was a better thing, I would have kept on doing it. But I really thought uh that people weren't digging it,
did did
like I mean this in a sense that
yeah.
people weren't it wasn't gonna like people weren't gonna I wasn't sure if people were gonna if that was music they would listen to over and over. That's what I say. What I'm saying? Like I'm not saying we weren't a good live band, but I wasn't quite sure if Get It Away was gonna be a record that was like, played a lot. I wasn't sure. So,
Well, once again, like here we are all these years later talking about it, and it's a record that people will spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars to get. Kids will either say I traded my entire CD collection away to get it when I was a younger person, you know, like
really?
yeah, like it was a these are artifacts that are
Yeah, did
very
you make
important.
any? Did you save it or did you make money on it?
Oh, I saved
Did
it.
you
I
try?
still have it. Oh
Oh,
my
you still
god.
have it? Oh,
Oh,
Jesus.
I'm never getting rid of that. Like, you know, I
Yeah.
think the Exclaim catalog, you know, it's funny. My friend and I were talking about it the other day because he finally completed his Exclaim catalog, and he was just talking
Wow.
about how amazing it is to look at them all. But it's such an incredible run. Why is it only 12 inches? Did you have an aversion to 7 inches?
That's a good. I mean, I have thought about that briefly, but I mean, I guess I must have had an aversion to it or something because I didn't pursue it. I don't know why. Because you know, very tight with Ian around that time. Ian might even been giving me. No, he wasn't giving me record plans. Definitely, I knew the record plans we were going to. We had a connection. My producer like knew the record plans we were going to go to. but definitely they picked us up. I don't know. I really don't know that answer, but I got it. You are right. I think it was, um, I think it was the cover probably, like I do think there's an attachment that I have to that cover art that I don't think I ever got with the 7 inch. I was like always like a shitty cover on the 7 inch. And that even, carried over to CDs. It even got worse when the CDs came, I really like the 12-inch cover art.
Well, and they all look amazing.
Because let's face it, our records aren't even full. Maybe you could interpret them not as full-length albums, So you
yeah.
could say, I don't even know if we could have fit them on, 7, whatever we could have fit on there, whatever. But I'm just saying, I really think the cover art was what kind of did it for me.
Oh, and they still look all spectacular to this day. You mentioned bands when they started playing faster. What did you think of Deep Wound when Deep Wound showed up?
Well, all those bands were playing real. I mean, I can't remember back. I definitely remember Deep Wound because
Yeah.
we played with us, But I without remembering these details, I'd say that probably most of those bands that could play very fast were kind of intimidating to me because I don't think we could play that well that fast. So, I remember consciously the biggest thought. I remember seeing like Jerry's Kids play and thinking, man, Gangrene probably more than Jerry's Kids, thinking like, wow, this guy's play so fast. Like I don't think I could. When I played fast, I felt like we were like not in sync. And I think part of the thing that makes me really enjoy playing music is when you're all together and that power chord is hitting and stuff like that. So to be like racing like that, so immediately at that point, we record that record, there wasn't like so many fast bands. I mean, we might have been one of the fastest when that record came out,
Yeah.
And yeah, really, I'm not just joking. We probably were like in the top 10 fast bands when that came out. And then when all
Absolutely.
the other bands came out, I was like, nah, we're not gonna be able to play fast anymore. You said that definitely I remember DRI and
Yeah.
thinking, I think that was the one that really cemented. I was like, we're gonna have to find a new groove here because it's not gonna be this thing.
Well, it's funny because like you talked about how that early Boston, what you described as sort of that art punk stuff that was happening earlier. It's almost like the speed that you guys set starts a new Boston sound that carries like Siege is from Boston. Like there's so many hyper fast
Yeah.
hardcore bands. Even today, like, Boston Strangler in more recent years, like there is a Boston hardcore sound that's birthed with those records.
Oh, then speed. You think speed? You think?
I think speed's a part of it, but like it's also controlled speed. Like it's not like, just spastic, grindy type stuff. It's like,
Because I thought the interesting thing was when the speed turned into thrash. The band, the term thrash came out, and the metal bands were playing thrash or whatever. So speed actually hit the metal world too. I'm sure there's probably metal guys, maybe the Scorpions are probably saying the same thing as, man, we're not playing fast enough. I don't know.
but I'm sure that's the hardcore influence, and people like Metallica and people like Slayer, like they were definitely aware of all this stuff, like, and certainly fans in some cases.
Well, I think for in their scene, it certainly was a differentiator, for them, right?
Hmm.
Uh, versus like all the bands of that time, like to have speed metal was different, so they were paving their own thing, like to separate themselves from the, because they were most part those bands were all indie metal bands starting out, right? So how's an indie metal band, they can't be making like the you can't be making the Twisted Sister record, probably, right? I mean, they're not gonna stand out because so they were making this something different, and I mean, like most people, I remember hearing that first Metallica record, or even the indie record, not thinking it had that commercial potential, but I actually think that I think there's a radio station that could have been playing. I listened to that Marky Ramone station. I think that could have been an FM channel back then. And I think to develop an audience, you got to kind of spoon feed them and nurture them and grow. And the business people didn't want to do that. That's the way I look at it. I mean, because I bet all those record people, in my opinion, probably think that they could have made any music popular. They just decided that it was going to be this one this time. I mean, their job is to sell records. So they're going to find someone who probably causes the least disruption, least cost, that they can sell the most records with. It's the same thing as selling pills. Try to sell the most you can sell, and you understand. You can respect that, understand it. They probably don't give a shit about the music. I'm sure there's many people in that thing that could care less about the music or who it is and what it is. It could switch from punk to rock to whatever. As long as it sells, that's all they care, you know. Same guy's a pill salesman, right? He doesn't care if it's opiates or marijuana or whatever,
It's a
selling
product.
pills. It's
Yeah,
a
just
product, you know.
yeah. Well, but it's funny how many records came out the same year as Get It Away that no one remembers that were on major labels and had huge campaigns and maybe even huge hits, but there's no staying power for it. Like, we certainly, there's just I know because I go through record stores all the time and I'm flipping by these dollar bin records and it's amazing how much of this stuff was put out
Oh,
and
you're
it
saying
just
you see a lot of 80, 82, 83
just like
vintage product
shitty
out
new
there?
wave stuff and
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
cash
Well, see, they,
grabby.
right? They were definitely trying to get those bands. Maybe there was some
Yep.
late to the party, right? The Cars, Blondie, that whole thing when that was kind of pushing, And I remember, I think Black Flag, had got like some interest for some label. I think we actually have. I found going through all my files, we have a letter, and I don't even know how this letter came in my possession from that guy Michael Alago, a rejection letter from Elektra from him to us.
What? That's
Yeah,
amazing. Oh, that's
yeah,
so
oh
awesome.
yeah, yeah. But what's amazing is that I didn't know who this guy was until Drew Stone did this doc and everything, and now I'm putting it all together. And I go through my stuff and I see this letter because our producer died in the last year or something. So his name is on the letter. Like Alago sent to him, and I asked him, I go, Mike Bastrach's name was. I go, do you remember this letter? We got rejected. I go, and I laugh at it because you know, I don't think we're going to sell records. You know what I'm saying? So like, I mean, it's a no brainer. I don't know. Like, I could see some records being more popular and selling. I don't think we're going to sell records.
I think Mr. B, who produced your records and
Yeah.
everything like that, like what a genius for a lot of the stuff that he was involved in. Like obviously your records, but like just so many incredible stuff that probably you don't like too that I love from
Well,
Boston.
yeah. Do you know his stuff before? Like he was did this band Native Tongue? Do you ever hear that band?
I do know Native Tongue absolutely.
Oh,
Like
really?
I've
Yeah.
got I'm like a big modern what is method? Yeah, modern method
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
record
Really?
collector. Yeah, I've got like all those
That's
comps
interesting.
and
Because
outlets.
that label's really they really never really got their shit together. They didn't though, because I think they always were looking for to get a good big record. They never really got that big record, to my knowledge.
Yeah.
And in fact, that's how they entered the picture on the Boston, not LA. They'd wanted us to do it. I'm like, I said to them, like, what the fuck do I need these guys? I don't want these fucking guys. Now I became friends with them later on after that, but at the beginning, my God went up, and I'm like, my suspicion God, what the fuck are these guys doing? Well, else they want to, that's the way I think.
Was it
Probably was true.
was it kind of a separate scene with those Boston not LA bands? Like I know there's some crossover obviously
No,
between.
no, really, really was. I mean, I think for them to get, for them to fill that record out because we didn't want to do it, they had to reach a little deep.
Yeah, yeah,
Like I don't even know I don't know all the bands, but I mean, Gangrene's on that record, right?
yeah.
They
Jerry's
they were
Kids, a
Yeah,
few.
they were not seen. Those bands were not seen. They played with me,
Yeah.
so it's just that I said no, I'm not doing it, and they said they were going to do it. So but that's fine. I didn't have a problem with that. I just didn't want to do it. I saw no point in reason giving it to them. I didn't understand why they were like ultimately when you give your record away, first question you should ask is, well, what are they going to do for you that I can't do? Well, what are they going to do for you that Tang can't do? In the end, honestly, I think there's as much bad people in independent records as in major records. There's people that don't know what they're doing in both of them. So like, but you are, when you sign with a label, you're signing with that, you're signing them to manage your product, right? To
Hmm.
promote it and manage it and fiscally not be stupid or whatever. And there's many independents that I'm not sure are equipped to do that. I think, did I see that you're on Matador? Are you on Matador?
We were. We're
Okay,
now
so
on
you know
merch.
Gerard Cosley, right?
Yeah, I was going to ask you because Gerard brought it up at the time. I was going to see if you remember meeting him for the first time because when he was on the podcast twice. He
Oh,
brought
I
up.
didn't know. I don't met him. I mean, I met him in Boston, but I don't like. Why does he
He's
remember some fucking bad thought or
no,
something?
no. He said the
Oh,
first time he remembers seeing you at a show, or like it was when he was first
yeah.
going. It was like the sound check for Black Flag, when
Oh, I don't know.
and he was like he talked to you at that show.
Oh, I
There
just
that day.
remember. I remember. I remember. He interestingly enough, he was when this re-release thing, he was actually one of the first guys to really kind of get it cooking. He called me up in some out of the blue. It was like maybe 2012 or something. He said, "Hey, I want to release the record on Matador." Now the industry had gone through a little slowdown at that time, so I was trying to, once again, my antennas had to go up. Like, why does Gerard want our record on Matador? It didn't seem like it fit, to me. At that time, I don't. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was being premature. But we discussed it through and walked. But in the end, I didn't feel I had to answer that question. Maybe I'm wrong. You could tell me maybe more than I know. I was like, I'm not sure it's a fit. I'm not sure what he's going to do for us, which leads me to the, given the trust records. When I heard about the trust thing, I think I heard from Keith from Circle Jerks, maybe right around the pandemic, right pre-pandemic, told me about what trust was doing, put me in touch with Joe Nelson, went through it. Sounded like a real good fit. I just had to get to the point where I believed that they were going to do that job that that thing I just said, what are they going to do for me, And so it took a few years of talking with them, to see what he can do that other people can't do. Because we had many offers along the way. People wanted to put that record out. I'm sure someone's probably bootlegging it right now as I speak, knowing that's coming out. So including maybe the Youth of Today guys.
Well, I was going
But
to ask you about that. That's the rumor, right?
oh well, yeah, the rumor, and I put it on them, and I'm gonna tell you, I'll put this out. I don't know if I did this before. I'm gonna put it out again to see if they listen to this. But like I'm kind of disappointed because I do believe they had something to do with it. I do believe they know who did it. Either they both say when I put it on Purcell, I put it on the other one, they both claim they didn't do it. And I think they're just kind of saying, like, oh, I didn't do it, but I know Ray did it, or I know Jordan did it. That's I think the game they're playing. Maybe not. And I wish they just came to me and said, look, we were young. We really liked your band. We wanted this record in print. We did it. We fucked up and we're sorry. That would mean more to me than I think they're lying. Okay. Honestly. So I take that with a grain of salt, but I think they're lying because I think they know who did it. Maybe it was Jordan from Rev, which is funny because I after Gerard said it, I said, hey, let's go full circle this whole thing. So I called up. I said, look, Jordan, you want to put the record out? I was kind of like trying to say, motherfucker, you probably should put it out because you booted it already. I mean, he might not have got it. I think he got what I was coming from, but that was the whole message to him. I was like, I didn't say it, but I was like, hey, you want to put it out? But I'm like, I think I talked to bootleg a little bit, but that was the whole thing. The message was, hey, you might as well put it out because you bootlegged it once. But he wasn't in love with it as I thought he was because he didn't really make me an offer. And then, a couple other small labels on the way. And, even after we stopped, you're a vinyl guy too. So I know you're into the collecting thing, even, those records came out 82, 83, right along the way, people was always wanting them. So, the demand was always there. I could have repressed, all along. I just didn't, once again, it goes to my forward thinking attitude. I was like, why am I going to waste any time or energy or finances in a way, maybe like Ian did, because I know I saw something where he talked about putting all their finances into the current record, and they had to kind of work that whole thing, like whether to repress records or put new records out. I was a sole shop, like my business model was like on the Gangrene thing. I think Jerry's Kids and Nephews. I told those guys, dude, you put the record out, you can use the label if you want, to help you get distributed and stuff. Because that was kind of my deal with Ian, was to help me establish it. I asked him, hey, can I put it on Half Discord? He said yes. It was just kind of like an endorsement, almost like a stamp of approval, right? Because if you see that, so it's to get me going, and I offered the same thing to them, but I didn't want to get involved in recording them, because I honestly, I hated recording my own band. I wasn't gonna fucking put myself through with them. It wasn't easy. What the studio thing wasn't easy, and was what I was gonna go with before is that I learned to love the studio, okay? Because I hated it around 83 and 82, 83, 84, 85. But I started Gauge in 93, which was my next band. Only been in two bands. And that band was built around a studio out. Like, it wasn't built around members, it was built around a studio and then bringing members in, team. So it was like the physical equipment was part of the team almost in a way. So I learned to kind of embrace compressors and, outboard gear and tube gear. And I really, maybe the lessons that I didn't learn in 82 and 83, I learned in 92 and 93, 94. So I produced 3 Gauge records and, engineered and produced them. I used to bring in some people to help mix them. because I thought, when you sit with it, when you make a record like that, I used to we built these records from the song. Like we built these records from the beat, these records. So by the time you get to mix, man, I've heard it way too many times. So I thought it was fresh to bring in a fresh set of ears,
Yeah.
and multiple mix. I believe in that, but
So, because you mentioned like not wanting to reissue the records prior
yeah,
to this
yeah.
reissue thing. What led to Power coming out, and why did you decide to do
So,
Power?
well, because you know, I'll be upfront. My relationship with Chris was like quote a friend initially, right? And he'd was putting this starting Tang. I think he maybe released. I don't know his whole history. I think he released a couple singles first. This is around '91. We're talking. We're talking at this club they call a Channel. I noticed that records were disappearing from the shelves. I went to like a couple stores. I noticed there was no records on the shelves anymore. This thing called the compact disc was hitting the world, and I wasn't really up to speed on it. So I used to hear people at work talking about a compact disc, like audio files, and I wasn't really paying attention to them. I kind of already shifted. In fact, I stopped. I was a huge fan of music up till around '81 when I started the band, because this is another thing you probably won't understand, because you'd say, oh shit, he's a huge fan. I felt like to be in the band, I had to stop listening to music because it fucked with my head too much.
I get that.
I wasn't gonna like, what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't make that sacrifice. I think a lot of people use other music for inspiration, quite frankly, and I didn't want to use it for. I wanted to see if I could make something as as pure as possible. Of course, it's hard to be completely pure. It's not, but I'm saying if you listen to like fucking the Black Flag record all day, how can you pick up a guitar and not feel Black Flag? You know what I'm saying? So, and unfortunately, my love of music kind of ended somewhat, or tempered back. I mean, didn't have that same. Of course, the big format was gone at that point. I love this the vinyl, and now we shifted to CDs. I tried it. I didn't really like it. I like the digital part of it. I'm a big digital guy. I'm not an audiophile analog head, believes in the tube saturation, all that bullshit.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with digital. I like the convenience. I just don't like the format being small. If they'd made a big, large disc with large, I think I would have liked it. I think maybe. I don't know.
Well, they tried with those long boxes at first.
Oh, those long boxes, the stupidest fucking thing in the world. And I go back and I like, I like the music business because I like to study who was thinking, what they were thinking. And, some guy must have thought, we have these bins, right? We have these fucking record bins. We're going to reuse these by putting these long things up, right? That's the only reason you did it, because of the shelving. It had to be. Think about it. You know what I'm saying? I mean, they had the shelving was in place. They didn't want people to have to go buy new shelves and everything like that. They came, that there's no reason it had to be that long. I'm trying to say, right? Yeah. The whole thing was to be long, to probably because there's probably some shelving that needed that length, because 12 inches,
I think also to make it harder to steal too. Like
true, you could put that digital thing in there and stuff.
Slide it in your pocket.
I mean, were they ever just gonna, at the beginning, they probably was in such shock trying to figure out, could they just put this little thing by itself, and trust people and everything, the whole thing, who knows? But I do think, it was a mistake, because they missed that whole thing about kids going on the thing and looking at the covers and buying records. They totally missed that part of it.
Yeah, no, they totally. It just changed the way people appreciate music. Like you're saying, it's weirdly much more of a commodity. They have a way cheaper price point too, so they can make way more money on these CDs than they do on a piece of vinyl.
Well, I don't know the economics back then. I remember back when I started, the cover talk cost me 23 cents. The vinyl cost 63 cents. So I could make that record for $1. So those get it away, and kids would say, I'm talking, take out the fixed cost, the studio cost, just the mechanical cost of making the record was about $1 a record. Mm-hmm. I think the CDs were, because fast forward to like 92, I want to say the CDs would cost me like $3 maybe, to make the covers and the jewel case. What's that, $3, I want to say. So, I never really did a comparison of what, the economics were in. I don't think vinyl is expensive, right? Really,
it got really expensive by the time.
It got expensive because there's no more plants left.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. And I think the CDs also got cheaper. And I imagine the major labels were getting a price break on those $3 CDs back then too.
I mean, I'm printing like a couple thousand, whatever. I'm talking when you could stamp those things out like crazy.
What did you think the first time you saw Chris Novoselic wearing the SSD shirt from Nirvana?
Very flattered by it, yeah.
Was that like a weird thing? Like, were you aware of how, like, were you
Uh,
aware at the time of how much of a cult was kind of building around
I
these
was
records?
aware of it. I was aware of it because the one thing I'll give Curtis a Tang, is props that he did get the shirts out to people, because we made those. The Chris Novoselic shirt is got silver. It's like a silver tint. I believe my first silver tint shirt was given to him. I told him he could make when we put that record came out, Power, because it had a silver aspect to it. I said, I'm going to give you. I gave him permissions in the deal. He could make 25 T-shirts of that shirt in silver. That was the deal. He was not to make another shirt over 25. Of course, he's probably made fucking 25,000 of them. I'm not that much. Now he's probably made a couple hundred, I guess.
Yeah.
But his deal was never supposed to do that. It was just a very short, discreet deal. But and I think he got it. He probably got it in the hand of them and a few other people. Give him credit for. So yeah, but that's Curtis. If you know Curtis, that's his big thing, schmoozing with some people backstage. So that kind of like worked right in his thing. He probably schmoozed back at that Nirvana show and gave him the T-shirt. I don't know. I never really, I do have a lot of, the guy Jeff I met from Pearl Jam is a huge fan. I think, I talked to him, so I know he's a huge fan. I never talked to Chris Novoselic, so I don't know. Have you talked to him? I mean, I don't know
I've
I
never
don't
met
know.
him.
I don't know if he
No.
just wore the shirt because he was. I don't know like how deep it goes with him.
Well,
But
Dave's a fan. Dave Grohl's a fan. I know that
Dave
from,
Grohl was.
yeah,
Oh, I
when we
don't
toured,
never heard him. Yeah,
when we toured with him, we were talking about SSD, like,
yeah.
and to bring
Oh,
it back to wrestling, Robbie Brookside, who's now the head trainer at NXT, is a huge SSD fan.
really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
I don't know
and
any of this.
he's from a
People
time
need to
in,
reach out to me.
well,
No,
that's
because I mean, I did find out about the bass player in Soundgarden, Ben.
Cameron. Is it Cameron?
No, Ben. Can't remember his name. Ben.
I'll fix that in the intro.
Yeah, yeah,
I'll
okay,
put
yeah.
it.
I
Yeah.
think Ben. I should know Ben. Anyways, can't remember. Anyways, I found out, and they opened for Guns N' Roses. Remember, they walked into the audience, and I said, "Hey, you guys into SSD?" Because I'd heard through the grapevine. Soundgarden. Imagine this: we're in like a big, 12,000 seater. They're the opening band for Guns N' Roses. Well, they walk out through the crowd after their set. No one else in the crowd recognized who they were. My wife knew who they were, and I recognized who we were. And I said, hey, you guys, and they said, yeah, yeah, yeah. So that was my intro to Ben, and the other guys were there too with him. I do find out, I find out some people that I don't know. Like a lot of bass players.
Well, Jay Mascis, obviously from Deep Wound and Dinosaur Jr., he and I have covered Glue together. So
See,
there's,
that's another thing. I know about all those guys, but I never really. Just recently, I found out. Like, I'll be honest with you. A lot of times, I don't know if people hate me growing up. So I don't even know. I'm not really sure. So like, later on, I find out they like the band. A lot of times, I'm not sure if they like the band. I like me. I take it like a same kind of thing. So I like that part because
well,
whatever.
and I think that's the thing is because I think a lot of people just didn't know what your relationship to the band and the band's legacy was because,
Me?
well, yeah, because you had obviously another career and
Oh
stuff.
yeah.
So it wasn't like you were kind of like hanging around being like, hey, look at me, remember me from SSD,
Well, I
so
mean, I don't want to be a hanging around guy. I never wanted to go to go to, I try to, see shows if I can, but I never want to be identified as the guy in the back who used to play in SSD, kind of hanging around,
mm,
I didn't want to be identified as that guy. And I purposely needed a break from it. It wasn't like I needed a break from music. I love music, like I just needed a break from, it's tough being it's tough being a band. You get a bunch of different guys, and certainly my relationship, my singer has been well documented. So it wasn't easy, it's hard to keep it together, hard to keep everyone on the same page. And so I did the best I could to keep it going as long. So I mean, yeah, a lot of people think, I mean, I know that whole thing. I'm sure there's a lot of people that think that I went away. I never went away anywhere. I was always here, like I'm the
mhm.
same guy. And I still kept, like, when Fugazi came around, I talked to him. I didn't, I'm not saying I'm a guy that goes out, I'm not, I can't, I don't, I gotta work, man. I used to work 7 days a week, 16-hour days. So I'm not a guy that's going to go out there having quote fun, you know. I mean, everything's not fun.
Yeah.
So they would have probably not seen me, but I'm here, you know.
Well, also the record's not being reissued, and I think like it also built up this mystique, where
Yeah.
it's just like this sort of, and also the thing is that I keeps coming up on the show is this is such a short period of a very long life that you've lived, where we're
Yeah.
really talking about like a 7 year span in your life, and it's amazing how this is fetishized and crystallized for people for forever now. Like people just go back to these records and go back to this ultimately brief period in your life.
Yeah. So in many ways, you know, like I've got this thing all these years, you know, to put the record out, and you know, I feel good finally, you know, because I've even maybe up to a month ago, I still haven't reservations. Like, am I doing the right thing? Should I just let these records, you know, should I just keep you know, sticking the status quo is not a hard thing to do. It's pretty easy, you know. So I was falling into that trap, and you know, you know, I decided to, you know, I won't say go against my instinct. So just go against what I've been thinking, and you know, I want to give the people the records they want. So that's where Joe comes in. You know, I'm certainly not, you know, not trying to put out a record that I want to put out, you know, I want to match what they, you know, the people that want these records, I want to match what they want. That's what this is all about. So, you know, in the past, I can't say I've always thought that way. I never thought that way, maybe. So, but I, but I, I want to give them, you know, they're the ones going to buy. I mean, before I definitely, when I made those records, I went thinking, well, I'm making these records for them necessarily. I was just making these records, and if people bought them, they bought them, you know. But you know, only reason we're going recircling it back is that I hope we get it right. You know, I hope they like what we come out with. You know, just recently we discovered some old multi tracks from that period, you know, which is going to allow me to remix it, remaster it, and kind of, you know, tweak it a little bit. Which I'm sure there'll be some purists that won't like that, but you know, Joe will figure that out, and I'm sure the re-releases probably will be exactly like the originals, I would suspect, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Although, you know, I do think there's room to hear these other mixes, because you know, mixing in 83 is different than mixing in 2022, you know. You just think, you know, I think I understand the technology a little bit better myself too. So I'll know if something's lacking, I'll kind of be able to pinpoint where we're going, you know. Back then, when it didn't sound right, I just threw my hands up in the air and said, it doesn't sound right, man. And we went to this, like we tried to, we recorded Kids Will Say 3 times, maybe 4. Okay. And it basically was that. At the end of it, I'm like, this doesn't sound like the record I want to put out, you know. I mean, you could have put it out. Actually, if you listen to all 3 versions, it probably doesn't sound a whole lot different, you know. when I if I was to do a comparison. But back then, you know, every time I put the record, I was like, man, it doesn't sound like the record I want to make, you know. So would go on and make another one. So, you know,
Do you still
so
have all 3 versions? Do you still have all
this
3 versions of it?
of what, the tapes?
Of the tapes of the first of a Kids Will Have to Say?
I think that's what we just pulled up. These tapes.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, these tapes from like definitely is at least 2 of the sessions, because the guy
Yeah.
told me, the guy who restored these. You know, these tapes were destroyed. I got them back, and they got some water damage. They look like unusable. I mean, they really looked as bad as you can imagine. Like not just bad on a shelf, peeling away metal pop, like water damage, rust. Looks like, you know, maybe toilet stains and stuff. I don't know, like bad, you know. And I gave up on them kind of in a way, and I actually discouraged them. Ian wanted to restore them too. Ian was big on restoring. He wanted to put on Discord, believe it or not.
Wow.
Yeah, which really caught me for a loop. I still haven't wrapped my head around it, because I always thought that this DC was a Discord. You know,
Yeah.
Discord was a DC thing.
Yeah.
He said he wanted to put him on. I was like, we really, you know, he just touched upon it. You know, I kind of dismissed it. Was so dismissive because I didn't understand it. I should have, you know, maybe I should have pressed them and said, I don't understand why you want to do this. You know, I kind of did say it, but I still don't understand why he wanted to do it, because it, you know, like I said, I thought his label was a DC thing. He never ventured out too much from that, you know. But maybe it's because I think maybe it was a half label. Maybe he wanted to reconnect it. I don't know, because he's in an archival mode now himself. So maybe he thought pulling that half record was an important thing, or maybe
Mm-hmm.
just wanted to help me out. Maybe strictly just wanted to help me out, which would have been great too. But I wasn't sure. So, anyways, Joe was insistent on these tapes. And I said, whatever. I kind of trying to talk him out. I said, dude, don't waste your money. We got what we need. We'll put these records out, whatever the people want. But see, now I'm excited because I'm going to give them what they don't want. No, it's really back to the same thing again. It could be, if I don't watch myself, it could be because, I'll probably remix this thing. I'll be happy with it. And people will be like, that's not what we want, because I'll be honest, I felt that a lot during the whole tenure of the band, okay, all the way.
Mm-hmm.
Every time I put a record out, it's like they wanted the other record, it's like it never really was in sync. I felt, now I could be dead wrong because obviously the records lasted all these years, right? So I am wrong, right? But I'm telling you, real time, what I felt, real time feedback, real time was, I'm not in sync with my audience at all. We were always playing one record ahead too. Bad mistake, and I knew it even when we were doing it. Like by the time the record came out, like Get It Away, we weren't playing those songs. We were already playing the next record, and we knew it. Like it wasn't like we weren't aware of it. We knew it, and we didn't give a fuck. Which is even worse, And anyways, I learned, those are the mistakes I regret, and I tried to learn from them because, like I told my Gage, I did not make those same mistakes. I tried every mistake I made in SSD, I tried to correct and Gage, and same thing in this re-release. Every mistake I made, up to this point, hopefully Joe helps me and we get it right, But having these tapes, just in a way, it kind of makes me. I'll be able to I can play around with these things. I don't have much of a life right now, so this will
Well,
kind of keep me going for a while.
and I like, who doesn't want another version of these records? Like, I would love to hear different versions of it.
I don't know.
I love the versions that I have too, though.
Yeah, I think I don't think we'll put them on records because but I mean, certainly streaming. I see like Rihanna's got like 10 versions of every song, so why can't I have 2 or 3, right?
Exactly.
And if I think it's streaming. Like I do kind of like streaming because it's convenient. Like if someone, say I do put 2 versions of this, and like I think even the concept of making, I'm going to talk to Joe about this. I kind of was trying to encourage it. I'm thinking this out in my head right now. It'd be kind of cool. Maybe a couple people approach me and say, "Hey, I'd like to take a shot at mixing that or something." So like maybe we have some guest mix people that want to, maybe people that like the record meant something to them. I'm not talking like, but say you just mentioned a couple of people. Say I found some guy in the industry that I wasn't aware of who liked that record. Now he's like making Deftones records or something. Maybe like it'd be cool. I was thinking like if there was such a person, I don't know if such a person exists. But you told me a guy's in wrestling. Of course, he won't be the guy to tell me mix the record. But
the drummer in Fucked Up, Jonah Falco, has become quite a producer. He's done a lot of Chubby and the Gang, Chisel, like a lot of the big UK records that are coming out. He would shit his pants to get the opportunity to work on this record with you. So I will put his name forward as one of these guest remixers. He will definitely.
It's a concept I want to pitch to Joe. Maybe I don't know. Like I don't think he really knows. Like Joe's just restoring these tapes. This week is the tapes are just coming online, and I was seeing the fruit of what's coming up. I'm like, oh, this is some possibilities here. It still might not be great, but the fact that I know that I have multi-tracks, not just 2 tracks, multi-tracks of demos from that period, and they probably, like I said, back then I probably didn't, said if people asked me back then, why did you put those demos out? I said, there's a reason they didn't come out. You weren't meant to hear them, And now I probably look back on it. Maybe I was cutting hairs or something. So I'm going to re-listen to them, and I'm sure they'll see the light of day. So it's just another thing that we can put out there. But if people don't want, like I said, same thing. I'm not trying to give people things they don't want. People don't listen to them. That's fine. But it's flattering if they do listen to them.
I've got a playlist with 19 different versions of I Got a Right by the Stooges on it, so I will be very happy. Yeah, for a couple more versions to get what I'm saying.
You're a purist, I think.
Well, I think it's so fun to compare the different versions, and hear, oh yeah, this takes slightly different, or this sounds a little bit different. Like I think it's Yeah, I'm fascinated by that stuff, especially with a record that you love. Like, I'm
Oh
talking
yeah.
about listening to Get It Away for 20 times. Like, if I could listen to a different version for 10 of those times, it would have been awesome too.
Now let me ask you: when you say listen to them, you listening to the CD or a vinyl, or what are you
I
listening to?
I have it on vinyl, but I would be lying if I said I was getting up and flipping it over and over again. I was listening to it on
Okay.
streaming
Some
at that
people
point.
say, I'm just asking because some people tell me that that's the only way they enjoy music, putting the
Yeah.
needle to the thing.
I'm surrounded by records. I've
Yeah.
mortgaged my children's future to buy records at this point,
Wow.
and sadly, but even I have to admit that streaming is more convenient sometimes.
I'll tell you, like I have a love-hate thing with vinyl. I mean, I told as a fan of music, I really enjoyed it. I fan of the large format, but the piece of vinyl I wrestled with my whole life. I never liked it. I never liked when I used to put the vinyl, the crackle pops. I
Mhm.
hated that. Drove me crazy. Uh, there's so many things about it. I hate, I hated buying that that like felt thing that you just to clean the records with and stuff.
Yeah.
And I hated when a record came out with a wobble in it. Like the needle would
Yes.
bend. Sometimes you get one that would skip, right? But sometimes just a gentle kind of wave riding the wave. I hated that. I used to say, maybe it's just my inner engineering. I was like, why can't they make a record flat? It used to piss me off. Like, it really bothered me. I hated the format, really hated it because of those things. The needle abrasion thing, and the vinyl not being flat.
And then when you move, you really hate vinyl.
Oh, definitely. My
Oh,
wife had a big collection. Hers got like from the different moves we made around. She probably wrote about it in her book there. You
oh,
should
her
read
book's
a book.
amazing.
Yeah,
Nancy's been
book's
on the
amazing.
show. I
Yeah, she said you
huge.
did a great job with her.
Oh no, she is a legend, and just getting to talk to her about a completely different, like Philadelphia, which is a scene that I'm also obsessed with, but I think there's not as much coverage. Like I think Boston, D.C., and New York, really those scenes have kind of been canonized and are really important. And I think Philadelphia, for some reason, doesn't really get the same consideration. So I was
Right.
amazing to get to talk to her about all that stuff. And her
She
book's
she when I
phenomenal.
met her, she's a big music fan. I think that's how she met me because she bought that record. And she bought, I don't know if she bought it on based on the record cover, maybe. Uh so we shared that same thing, but we also kind of like pulled out around the same time. And a lot of it was because we moved a bunch of times. Her records got destroyed. She had all the minor threats and all those, the money records too. They all got destroyed. And she didn't. She just threw them out when the covers got all ruined and everything. And there was like a water leak and everything. So yeah, I'm sure a lot of people's records went through that kind of period too.
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, Al, this has been incredible, and I could talk to you for another 2 hours, but I won't subject you
Probably.
to that. But can I ask you a few more questions before you go?
Yeah, yeah.
One band I always wondered if you had any interaction from New York was the Abused. Did you guys ever play with them, or did you know them at all? They were another band kind of doing a straight edge thing.
Yeah, I've heard the name, but I can't say I remember. I mean, might have played with them to be honest. I mean, my memory isn't as sharp as I would have liked. 40 years. I don't
Yeah.
remember everyone I should have.
What?
Another thing. I wish I had detailed. Like Engage. I wrote down every show we played, the date and who we played with and stuff like that, and I detailed that in like a log. I wasn't smart enough to do that, and I wish I had that record. That record of who we played with and what shows and stuff like that.
I think Chris Menicucci from Radio Raheem Records probably knows every single show SSD played. I'll ask him to give me a breakdown
Well,
of the
that
shows.
it's funny if he does because I would like to see that record. That I like to see that record of these shows because I wonder if it's accurate. Because it would be a nice document to have. But
Yeah.
I'm not sure if he would because I'm not sure if I could make it accurately.
Well, I think the thing is there's so much love and once again collectors of these flyers now that there's just so many people that are trading these flyers or documenting these flyers and putting them out there that a
That's
lot of
true.
these
The flyers I could see. You're right. You're right. We made a flyer for every show, so
yeah,
I guess if you collected flyers, you could probably put the story together.
yeah, and I think we're
I
also
didn't think of that.
crowdsourcing. Yeah, crowdsourcing on the internet, like all these
Yep.
different people putting their information together. We could have like one of those Beatles book about every day of the Beatles career. We could do that for SSD eventually.
Yeah.
uh finally, DOA at the Underground, such a legendary show.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
heard. I wondered
Big
what
show.
Yeah, I wonder if you had any memories of that show.
Oh, those are the one of the shows I remember. Yeah, we tore the place was crazy. We tore the ceiling down, ripped it apart. I think we tried to blow the place up. I had a bunch of cherry bombs and M80s and stuff, and Yeah, that's probably see, that's a show where Springer probably, it's probably the one time that Springer and me, I'll comment on this a little, that Springer and I probably shared a common bond or something as we entered the night to destroy the place or something. But like he doesn't even understand, I could have been a knucklehead too, but I mean, I had to make choices in life. We all have roles to play in life and a band. Like if we're like if we're a basketball team and everyone shoots 3 pointers, well, someone has to rebound.
Hmm.
So during the SSD, a lot of people looked at me as like the dad, like the guy, the straight guy, whatever you want to call it, straight edge guy. I'm the guy in the comedy team. I'm the straight guy. But anyways, and so I felt all that period that people used to always think that our riff was always, our tension was always obvious, but I felt people probably sided with him most of the time along the way. At least that's what I felt. I think now people don't feel that way, but I could have been a fuck up like him, is what I'm trying to say. I could have, and I probably was during that show, the DOA show, when I was blowing up the bathroom or whatever.
I think one of my favorite parts in America's Hardcore is the reaction on your face when he comes downstairs at your house for the first time.
Yeah, that was genuine. That was completely genuine. No faking that. He wasn't supposed to be there. He somehow, we purposely planned that. He wasn't invited. Somehow he shows up. Unbelievable. Ruined the whole fucking night.
One last thing I got to ask you about, and this person has now departed, so rest in peace. But if you had any
Yeah.
Jake Phelps stories, because he is such a
Jake,
legend.
yeah, Jake's a huge part of this whole thing, like the crew, Boston crew. That was all my guys, like the crew was almost as important as the band. The crew
Mm.
got like, access to the, sit in the van, maybe more than the guys in the band, like I'm, as far as like who has sat where or whatever. So the crew was a big part of it. We traveled with the crew everywhere, and Jake was a big part of that. Jake's a fun guy, but Jake's he's a character and he's an interesting guy, and he's like almost as hard to deal with as Springer in a way, but a different way. Jake could easily be a divisive person and split the group, like if we're all going someplace, Jake on many occasions would take the guys and go out skating some pool or something. And, I'm usually very focused in what the mission is, the mission was to play, it wasn't to go skating. So, we had some problems. I had some problems along the way, Jake, but we were really good friends, and we kind of reconnected right before he passed away. I could see he was in trouble, actually, around that period. I saw when he did the Boston, whatever the Boston hardcore documentary is, I could see he was fucked up on the tape, and
Yeah.
I was like, he's, I just knew it was familiar, to it. So I was like, so we talked a little bit about, but when I talked with him, he wasn't as open about it. I felt he was kind of being a little bit guarded, so I don't really know what his life was at the end. But I mean, I did talk to him, but he seemed like he didn't want to share with me what was going on.
Well, this has been a dream conversation, Al, and I would
I
love
hope
to
I didn't
keep
let
you,
you down now, man,
dude.
because you
Not at
got me
all.
thinking about that. No,
Anytime you want to come back on this thing, please
if you want
know.
to do this and you want to piece something together, call me back up. I'm
No,
here
this was
all during the
incredible,
day.
dude. This was
Okay.
unbelievable.
Yeah.
Thank
Okay.
you for taking the time, and yeah, I'll be in touch at some point. I got to send you the video of fucked up covering Glue too, because
Oh yeah.
I've been in like several bands covering Glue over the years. So
Thank you for covering it and keeping it alive. That's really you guys are responsible. All the people carrying the torch and bringing it forward. I mean, for guys like you, I wouldn't, we wouldn't be talking about this right now. So believe me, I don't. That doesn't, that is a big thing.